Thank you, Provost, and good morning, members. If you hear your name, can you confirm your attendance, please? Provost Leach?
Here.
Councillor Canning?
Present, thanks.
Councillor Friel?
I'm here, Lynn, thank you.
Councillor McFadden? Deputy Provost McGee?
Yep.
Councillor Caroline Barton?
Here, thanks.
Councillor Cowan?
Here.
Councillor Richardson?
Present.
Councillor Adams?
Present, thank you.
Councillor Linton?
Here.
Councillor Reid?
Here.
Councillor Sangster?
Here, good morning.
Councillor Graham Barton?
Yeah, thanks, Lynn.
Councillor Boyd?
Here, thanks, Lynn.
Councillor Douglas?
Yeah, good morning, Lynn.
Councillor Ingram?
Here, thanks, Lynn.
Councillor Peter Mabin?
I'm here, good morning.
Councillor Maitland?
Here.
Councillor Todd?
Here.
Councillor Clark?
Here.
Councillor Cogley?
Here.
We have apology this morning from Councillor McGregor. Councillor Linda Mabin?
Here, thanks, Lynn.
Councillor Lennox?
Morning, here.
Councillor Simmons?
Here.
We also have an apology this morning from Councillor Crawford. Councillor June Kyle? Councillor McMahon?
Yeah, Lynn, thanks.
Councillor Watts?
Morning, Lynn, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Filson? Councillor Hogg?
I'm here, thank you.
Councillor James Kyle? And I'll call again for Councillor McFadden. And Councillor Filson. Nope, thank you, Provost.
Lynn, thank you very much. Members, if you would please indulge me just to go through some Provost remarks. It's been a really busy time recently. I've seen a lot of you at events through our communities. So this is just a wee handful of them. So first of all, it was Breathe Easy group meeting. This is held at the Robert Burns World Federation in Kilmarnock, and this was on the 4th of March. I had the pleasure of being invited along to be a guest speaker and to learn more about East Ayrshire's Breathe Easy support group in Kilmarnock, which is affiliated with Asthma and Lung UK. They also have a support group in Kilmarnock. It's a voluntary support group for people living with a lung condition in East Ayrshire, as well as being a welcoming group of people that can help you manage lung condition by sharing information and advice through peer support. On Thursday the 5th of March, I was at Annan Hill Primary School for World Book Day. I read the book Zog to the children. I believe that our legal officer, David Mitchell, did the same with Zog. It was a lot of fun. It was great to chat to the young people after it, find out what their favourite books were. Don't think I was into some of the books at that age, but we've got some really switched on young people. So a thank you to Annan Hill Primary School for having me along to read them a book. International Women's Day, or we held a series of events throughout a week. It was on the 6th of March they started at SL 33, and International Women's Day was on Sunday the 8th of March. So this year's theme was Give to Gain, Empowering Women and Creating Safer Communities. Throughout the week I had a pleasure attending 3 events held by the council. The first one was for council staff, and I chaired a panel of inspirational women speakers that consisted of the football legend Rose Riley, Barbara McIntyre, who's a ScotRail engineer director, she's from Kilmarnock, and Ayrshire Shide, who's a nutritional and lifestyle coach. It was held at SL 33, a skills and learning hub in Kilmarnock, and it was really informative and fun day. The following week, East Ayrshire Health and Social Care Partnership hosted 2 fun-packed events and celebrated women and girls across East Ayrshire in collaboration with the Nest at Cumnock and then the Rose Riley Sports Centre in Stewarton. They were very good events and well turned out by our communities. Ayrshire Samaritan's 60th anniversary on the 7th of March. I had the pleasure of being invited along to their birthday party. Samaritans is a charity dedicated to listening to people who are going through a tough time, helping to reduce isolation and prevent the loss of lives. They've got a great team of volunteers who listen and support people at their branch in Kilmarnock, and they help so many people throughout Ayrshire, including groups, school, and they're inside a local prison also. It was a wonderful evening, and I really enjoyed getting to meet so many people who dedicate their time to helping people at tough times in their life. Then it was the Scottish Schools Pipe Band Championships. I saw Winnie use at it, so you know how good it was. But I was delighted to welcome schools from across the entire of Scotland to our William McIlvanney campus in Kilmarnock. We were proud to once again host the brilliant Scottish Schools Pipe Band Championships, which was organised in partnership with the Scottish Schools Pipes and Drums Trust. The school was absolutely packed with young people, tutors, parents, family, staff and supporters. And it was wonderful to hear the mass sound of pipes tuning and the music playing in every classroom and corner of the building. There was so many good performances on the day from the freestyle category. One of note was an amazing rendition of Bohemian Rhapsody by Boroughmuir High School Pipe Band in Edinburgh. And the junior pipe bands, quadrats and the classic pipe songs for secondary schools all under the country were also fantastic. A very big well done to everyone involved. We are very proud of every young person who took part, and I'm sure the future of Scotland's piping and drumming community is in very good hands. Members, thank you for that. And if we move on to business proper. Members, first item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Provost. I declare an interest at item 8. Whilst I'm a member of the Royal Town Planning Institute, as members are aware, I also work in the renewable energy industry and feel it probably best that I don't take part. Thanks.
Yep, absolutely fair. Thank you. Anyone else? We all good online? Yep. Thank you. So moving on to the minutes of the previous meeting. This was for the special council meeting of the 19th of February and the meeting of the 26th of February. I will move as a correct record.
Second, Provost.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Has anybody got any questions or Councillor Douglas?
Thank you very much, Provost. In terms of matters arising from the last council following South Ayrshire Council's decision not to proceed with privatising the parking enforcement side in Ara, I just wondered how that will impact on cross-border working between ourselves and South Ayrshire from the parking enforcement side, if there maybe can be an update, and if it isn't available today, if potentially members could be emailed a response. Thank you.
Thank you. Eddie?
Thanks, Provost. I think as we indicated before, the way the contract was set up, it was going to be able to be, operated by one or other council or both, but we'll get more detail of that. So we'd still continue, with the process that East Ayrshire Council had voted for here, and it will be for East Ayrshire Council to take forward, but we'll come back with the detail about implementation.
Okay, thank you. Members, anyone else? Online okay? Yep. Thank you. Okay, so next is we're moving on to the Cabinet Committee minutes for approval. Councillor Reid.
Thanks, Provost. I move them on block.
Second that, Provost.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Deputy Leader. Leader.
Thanks. Could I just go to the Fire and Rescue Committee in terms of the crime statistics, and just wonder if the Chief Executive can update us the recent police issues that affected around about Kilmarnock bus station. If he can give us an update in terms of a violent crime incident involving a number of people.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Eddie.
Thanks, Provost, Leader. So obviously all members will be aware of, the press, around recent incidents in Kilmarnock town centre. In addition to our regular meetings with the police that Blair, leads, I've also had meetings with senior police officers, with the superintendent and the chief inspectors. I personally, met with them to discuss our, activities within the town centre. So everything from how we commission support directly in the bus station, to the additional support that the council commissions from the police, and indeed the police's core activity around the town centre, and how that's deployed, how that's focused. And these are meetings that we will continue to have and indeed review in terms of what we're doing there at that time. The police are absolutely aware of the impact that this is having on our local communities. I have to say, both the senior police officers that I met with come from East Ayrshire, come from Kilmarnock, and are absolutely aware of the impact that's here, and would want to look at how, on a multi-agency basis, that can, be addressed. It won't be addressed solely by the council or by the police. It's going to take actions, by a range of different people to do that. So they were, and I say these are in addition to the regular updates that, that Blair would have. I've met with them personally yesterday to make sure that we start to take these forward.
Thanks, Eddie. Yeah, Leader.
Thanks. If I can also refer to the joint youth cabinet meeting that we had, and I think, there's reading some of the comments in social media, blanket blaming all our young people. We know it's just an absolute small minority. I think the time is now that we really need to seriously engage with young people, and maybe, as the Chief Executive, we can maybe arrange maybe a joint meeting, an appropriate joint meeting with some of the leadership for the youth cabinet, ourselves and the police. Just because, the young people themselves told us at that meeting that they were the ones that were most adversely affected, and not just felt threatened by some of the issues as well. And I think we really need to challenge head on that the majority of young people are decent, decent citizens, and we just need to engage properly with young people to actually tackle the problem.
Yep, totally concur, Leader. Eddie?
Yep, happy to do that. And indeed, if we're looking at things that impact on children and young people, not only would it be good practice, but now under UNCRC, our children and young people actually have a right to be consulted in terms of what we're doing. So we'd be happy to engage with the youth cabinet and make arrangements for how they can, feed in with our wider politicians in terms of having a conversation around, the proposals and actions around youth disorder.
Yep, that okay? Thank you. Love a mention of your youth cabinet. Great. I've got Councillor Linton and then Councillor Richardson. Councillor Linton.
Yep, just really to endorse what the leader has said. I was struck at the Young People's Cabinet with just how impactful the actions of a tiny minority are on our young people. And I think he's absolutely right. We need to take this head on. I think, to tar all young people with this brush is totally unacceptable.
Sure, thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Thanks, Provost. It's just to point out that, most elected members did pick up on recent, violence at the bus station through the press. And maybe we need to look at, we're speaking about, keeping elected members up to date. Surely there should have been some briefing came out to all 32 elected members, not just to some, about what happened at the bus station, because it's getting really, really serious now. My other point is, and I've said this so many times before, every elected member realises it's only a tiny, tiny minority that are causing all of this trouble. But I think the way that the police, the justice system, the council, social services, etc., deal with that tiny minority needs to change, and it needs to get tougher.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Richardson. In terms of the update request, Eddie?
So, in terms of updates, clearly there are different levels of updates. As the Chief Executive of the Council, I get a range of information passed to me from many places, on a daily basis. And I then need to make a consideration about who I share that information with. Sometimes I will share that information with all 32 members. Sometimes I'll share that with the leadership of the council. Sometimes because of the nature of it and sometimes ongoing nature of it, I won't actually share it with any, elected members. So there has to be, like when I share information, that you have to feel it's appropriate to do that. It's not something that would change, and that the information is shared in a way that remains, secure in terms of that. So that's the considerations that I make, on a daily basis about sharing information. So they're tiered, share the information that I do on a daily basis.
Okay for now?
That's an okay answer from Eddie, but there was, a few days later, we're getting it all in the press, we're getting it all in the papers anyway. So I don't see why we couldn't get a wee bit of a heads up as elected members. Basically the same sort of level of information that 48 hours, 72 hours later was freely available in the papers.
Yep, okay, noted, thank you. I've got Councillor Barton, then Councillor Barton, then Councillor Boyd.
Thanks, Provost. I chair the Police Fire and Rescue Committee, and on a few occasions I have requested that the police report any incidents of note to local ward members. Now, I'm aware we've heard today that there could be sensitive information that should not be shared with local members, but what I have requested, and I will request at the next meeting, is that an awareness notification should be sent out to the appropriate ward members so that we're aware that something's happened. When we talk to our constituents in the street, we can make them aware. We can't share sensitive information, but we are aware. So I will endeavour to make that request again.
Thanks, Councillor Bartney. We heads up, I get that. Councillor Boyd.
Thanks. Just to reiterate the point again, your communications. I was disappointed to find out on Saturday morning via social media as I in the Glasgow Live Facebook page after there was hundreds of comments on it already. So, you know, I've also spoke to the police as well, and it was a really good conversation. I think the police are doing a brilliant job under challenging conditions. You know, I'm in the bus station area every Friday. I go up to the wee chip shop, sit, watch what's going on for half an hour before I go to first edition. That's what I do on a Friday. I watch, I see all these youths about, and I've said to the police, I don't see enough of a presence, and I've taken it on board because I'm aware we are giving the police funding, but you know, and I know there's other areas like Cumnock, Stewart and Lochdoon, so it's how far they spread that. But you know, you know, everybody knows my opinion on this. I'm not going to go on about that again, but this needs to stop. It has to stop, because I was doing in Liverpool at the Scotland game, and see when you go into pubs or walking about and you meet other Tapping Army, where are you from? I'm from Kilmarnock. Oh, Kilmarnock, you know, this town is getting reputational damage because we're not tackling it. This has been in BBC, STV. It has to stop. You know, we're trying to regenerate the town. Sometimes I wonder, what's the point if we can't get this right? Because people are telling me they're not going into that town centre because of the bus station and what's happening with youth behaviour. So I back my colleagues, it has to change, and I'm willing to work with MD to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. Councillor Cogley.
Thank you, and thank you very much, Eddie, for all your comments regarding engagement. But with due respect, it's nothing that we haven't heard previously. And I think it was last May or last June where I submitted a motion to Council on the specifically on the subject matter of antisocial behaviour and our requirement, our legislative requirement to work closely with the police, and that we should have a joint statement. Now, we don't yet have that joint statement, and here we are nearly a year on, with these awful incidents still happening in Kilmarnock Town Centre. I think the talk about meetings and engagement is great, and yes, we do need to do all of that, but nothing seems to be changing. And I think that what is going to change that, what is going to be the tipping point by which actually we do change something? You know, is there going to be a loss of life before we actually take this seriously enough to address it? Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Do you want to come back on that?
Claire, do you want to just up an antisocial behaviour strategy?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Cogley. So I can confirm that the draft antisocial behaviour strategy was approved by Council, and we will be imminently going out to consult with all of the key partners that we referred to as part of that previous Council decision. So that will commence imminently, and we will bring the findings back to the Chamber at the very earliest opportunity. But work is well developed in that regard. Thank you.
Is that okay, Councillor Cogley?
Thank you.
Okay. Yep, thank you. Reassuring, Blair, thank you. Councillor James Adams.
Thank you. We seem to have two separate strands here. The first one is communication. And again, we got an email from the police about the second incident, which was less serious than the first incident. So when I'm getting asked about the first incident, I don't know anything about it, but somebody can show me a clip of the fight on their phone, which is quite discouraging. And then we find about it in social media. Then there's a lesser incident, we get told about that one. So I think we need to get the communication right. As Councillor Barton says, we don't need to know all the issues and the ins and outs, but we do need to know what's happened and what we're doing about it. The second issue, and I think Councillor Boyd makes the point very well, it's public safety, and people need to know that they can be safe going into Kilmarnock at any time. And we pay the police money for that. I'm not criticising the police, they do a good job, but we need more of a presence in and around the bus station, particularly at the weekends. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Leader?
I think it was at the end of the attended the joint children's and young people's cabinet, heard from the young people themselves, and the the influence that we've got from social media. Things are changing. There's it's violent crimes are unacceptable, but I had a constituent that shared a copy of a violent, a violent clip of one of the incidents that I wish I hadn't seen because it was absolutely horrific. But these are getting widely circulated, and they're absolutely they're going out unregulated. And there's also AI that's in the mix as well. And I think values and things are changing. Maybe somebody has seen the Manosphere documentary by Louis Theroux, and this is what our young people are highlighting to us. And envy with it's got kids out there really, it's really worrying times for young people out there having to deal with all this. So I think we've got to just, it's terrible, but these are issues that are nationwide. But we've got to look after make our town centre as safe as possible. But I think the way to do this is to really engage with our young people and listen to what they've got to say. Because I'll say it again, young people themselves have got to face these people in their classrooms and their day-to-day business more so than the rest of adults. So I think we've got to work with the young people. The good young people are out there that are in the majority, and I think that's the way to go.
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, our young folks share can definitely see it from their perspective. So I think what we're hearing is striking the balance between good communication, championing the majority of young people, and still being able to tackle this small minority of young people that are causing the problems. Striking that balance isn't easy, and I think everybody's in it to try and really get to the bottom of this through whatever measures. So thank you all members for your inputs. If there's no one else, are we happy to approve the minutes of the Cabinet and Committee papers? Yeah, members, thank you. So now we're moving on to the activities of the Governance and Scrutiny Committee. This is the annual report for 2025, and I'll pass to Chair, Councillor Peter Maben for the report. Thanks.
Thank you, Provost. Good morning, Provost, selected members, and thank you for the opportunity to again present to you today the annual report on the activities of the Governance and Scrutiny Committee, this time for the 2025 calendar year. This is my second annual report to the Council. The report continues with the approach that's been taken over previous years and presents highlights of our activities and exception reporting. The committee membership, at the outset, I would wish to thank Councillors Billy Crawford, Neil Watts and David Richardson, who left the committee during the course of the year, for their positive input and contributions during their time as members of the committee. During the year, we also welcomed new onto the committee, Councillor Jane Sangster, Kevin McGregor, John McFadden and Caroline Barton. Call-ins. As members are aware, the call-in mechanism remains an effective option where a significant number of members have concerns about a particular decision or course of action that the Cabinet have agreed. As detailed in Section 6 of the report, Committee in December dealt with a call-in relating to a decision taken by the Chief Executive under the emergency powers available to him in terms of the Council's scheme of delegation. Following due process, the committee noted the decision taken by the Chief Executive and the related decision of the Cabinet and agreed that there were no matters to be referred back to Cabinet for further consideration. I think it's worth noting that in recent times the call-in mechanism has been fairly infrequently used, and I do believe that's reflective of the arrangements in place for constructive cross-party political engagement. However, the call-in mechanism remains an effective opportunity to hold the decision-making body to account. Scrutiny review topics. Section 7 and 8 of the report provide an overview of the committee's considerations of two scrutiny review topics. That was violence in schools and absence rates across the council, which have been identified by members of the GNS committee workshop on the 7th of November. A further topic identified at the workshop in 24 was ASM provision, and that will be considered by GNS when implementation of the ASN review is agreed by Cabinet in June. That's progressed to a stage such as it will allow the most effective consideration by the G&S Committee. I'd remind everyone that topic review suggestions can be submitted from a range of sources, including elected members, officers, partners, and members of the public. Internal audit. The interrelationship between the Governance Scrutiny Committee and the Internal Audit Service, and particularly the Chief Internal Auditor, is critical to the proper and effective functioning of both the committee and the service. In that respect, sections 9 through to 19 of the report set out the key aspects and timescales for internal audit reporting during the year, including the very important anti-fraud work. As in the case in the past, it's pleasing to note, amongst other things, that the internal audit opinion is set out in the annual report for 24-25, and this was that the Council's internal control procedures are generally found to operate as intended to meet management's requirements, and that the overall opinion continued to be that reasonable assurance can be placed upon the adequacy and effectiveness of the Council's framework of governance, risk management and control. Ailey Mackay and our team operate an open door approach, and I do take the opportunity to meet with them out with committee meetings to discuss matters from time to time. I want to thank Ailey and our team for all the excellent work that they put in and for the support that they provide to the committee, to myself as chair. External audit. Audit Scotland are now in the third year of their 5-year appointment as external auditors. It's welcome to note that the audit of the annual accounts confirmed that the Council has once again received an unmodified audit opinion, with no significant issues arising as identified as areas of risk. It's pleasing to note in the first year of the implementation of the new International Financial Reporting Standard, that's not easy to say, that's IFRS 16 about leases. It's a complex and challenging change that the public sector organisations have been preparing for a number of years. The Council's implementation was delivered smoothly with no issues identified. Corporate governance, risk management and best value. As members will be only too aware, based on reporting of the G&S Committee and otherwise, the application of effective corporate governance, risk management and best value are integral to how the Council operates, particularly in these challenging times, and the extensive processes relating to all of that and how that sits within the terms of reference of the committee. That's covered in some detail in sections 22 to 27 of the report. For scrutiny generally, an important resource of the committee is the reports that are submitted on a regular basis to provide updates and information on a key range of operational areas. That informs and enables members of the committee on a wider scrutiny function. The range of reports are mentioned in section 38, and of course the quarterly East Ayrshire Performs reports provide a wealth of detail on service-related performance, and as such is an invaluable tool, particularly in the revised format. Again, my thanks go to all the officers involved in preparation of these reports, which are so important to the committee's work. Education. With regard to education services, I do believe that the committee members share my own view on the absolute importance of effective delivery of educational services to all our young people at all levels and over all types of provision. That's reflected in the fact that during the 25 committee year, we received a range of education-related reports, including those advising of the outcomes of HMIE inspections at a number of our schools, and those relating to attainment and initial leaver destinations, inspections of early childhood centres and funded providers, and the Education Service Standards and Quality Report. And that's all detailed in sections 29 through to 35 of the report. I'm pleased to note that the reports provided to the committee have presented an extremely positive picture of the performance of our educational services over the year, and more importantly, the progress and achievement of our young people. They are the future for all of us. As noted, the committee also undertook visits during the year to Shotley's Primary School and ECC and to Doon Academy. These visits were a valuable opportunity for members of the committee to engage first-hand with head teachers, staff and pupils within their own educational settings and get a look around the schools. Thank you to all of them for taking the time and trouble to meet with us, and I hope that there'll be opportunities for similar visits to other schools in the future. In addition, as I've already referred to, certain aspects of educational services were also included within scrutiny review activity during 25. Code of conduct and training. The report also mentions in detail aspects of specific relevance to members relating to councillors' code of conduct and training. That's set out in sections 41, 42 respectively. We also do an annual self-assessment. I think it's worth highlighting the outcomes of the GNS Committee annual self-assessment for 25. That's detailed in paragraphs 44 to 46, which again confirmed the excellent performance of the committee and effectively discharging its functions within the council's broader decision-making arrangements, reflecting similar outcomes in preceding years. For myself as chair, I'm sure also the other members of the committee, it's encouraging to have that validation of the work that we do. In concluding, I think that the report paints a very positive picture of how the GNS Committee proactively fulfils its role in relation to all areas of the terms of reference, providing effective oversight in how the council conducts its business and challenge where it's considered that challenge is needed. That is something which is always important, but particularly so in recent times and at the present time, given the very severe financial and service delivery pressures currently faced by the council and its partners, so as to ensure the best use of resources that we have available to us. In closing, Provost and members, I must take the opportunity to thank my Vice Chair, Councillor Sally Cogley, for her input and support over the year, and my fellow committee members for their contributions, dedication and commitment to the task, as well as the efforts and invaluable input from officers and all the others who have been involved in supporting the committee, including our external auditors, Audit Scotland. So can I just say that the officers that all come to our committees, they are on the ball, they are on top of their role, and it's very rare that someone in the GNS committee asks a question that they don't have the answer to. It's very rare, and even then, when they don't have the answer, they'll disappear and send an email. They'll get us the answer usually the same day or the next day. Our officers are excellent. Finally, a special mention to Stuart Nelson and the member services team. I lost wee Lynn last year. They took her away from me and gave her other duties to do. And what they did, they found Stuart Nelson, who was sitting with his feet up, enjoying a happy retirement. So they dragged him out of retirement and says, "Come on, Stuart, back to work. We need you." And he's been brilliant. He chases the officers. He pulls all the reports together on time. And then on the days of the meeting, he keeps me focused and stops me wandering and reminds me where I'm going. I'm not sure what will happen next with Stuart. I don't know if he retires again. I don't know if he's had a retirement due and he's allowed a second retirement due. But is Stuart not in?
No.
He's not here. But in his absence, I'd like to thank him for his help over the last year. And in concluding, Provost, I'm happy to take any comments or questions on the activities of GNS over the last year. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mayburn, and a very big well done on your chairing for another year. Thank you. Members, I'll open it up. Councillor Cogley.
Thank you, Provost. And I just wanted to thank Councillor Mayburn for his input as chair. I think he's an excellent chair of the committee. And also to mention Stuart, who isn't in the room today, and David Mitchell, who I can see is attending online, without whose help we would not be able to operate in the way that we do. So thank you to those key people. That's all I wanted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cogley. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. More a comment, Provost, that if Stuart can manage to pin down Councillor Mayburn and make sure he's no wandering, then I must take some hints from him. Because the other Councillor Mayburn and I think both have that issue at times. But I just know, on a more serious note, I wanted to say that as a past chair of GNS myself, and we know how important it is, and given the cabinet functions that we have in this council in terms of how we do our business, GNS is a powerful counterbalance to that, and I'm pleased to hear that members are taking their roles so seriously in GNS. It is vital, it is very important, and I'm glad that has continued for the last year. So more power to their elbow. And thank you again, Councillor Maben, for a very comprehensive report. And as I say, I will be catching up with Stuart just to get some tips on how to pin you down. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Councillor Richardson.
Thanks, Provost. It was just to say thanks to Councillor Maben there for getting a wee bit of recognition for the work that I put into GNS over the years. I miss governance and scrutiny meetings, and it's just to say to a wee bit following on from Councillor Douglas there, it's just to say to the remaining members on GNS, keep asking those searching questions, because governance and scrutiny, just as Councillor Douglas has just said, does have a very, very important function to play. The way the council's set up, it's there to basically question cabinet and anything that's a wee bit sort of questionable, and it is that counterbalance. It's that very, very important counterbalance. So to the members that are still on the committee, keep asking those searching questions.
Thank you. Members, is everybody good? Online okay? Yep. Councillor Maben, thank you very much. And good luck for another year. Okay. Members, we're moving on to agenda item number 5. This is financial assurance for health and social care, pages 71 to 93 in your papers, and I'll bring in our Chief Executive. Thanks, Eddie.
Thanks, Provost. Members, this is the report that was requested to come back and keep, progress in terms of what we're doing in terms of the oversight of health and social care budget. The report initially sets out a background, and the background, as we all know, was that significant overspend in respect of the partnership in 25-26. It also details the actions that have been taken then in terms of oversight of that, which now includes weekly meetings chaired by myself, senior members of the council and of the Health and Social Care Partnership. I would note, and I think members are aware, that we've also brought additional capacity into that, both through the short term, through Alec McPhee Senior, who comes back and supports us as a board, and particularly supports Joe in his work as a board, and more recently, Ailey Mackay moving across for a year seconded to the IJB in terms of the Chief Financial Officer of the IJB there for that. Since last time we've been at council, there's been a significant national report published in terms of the local government benchmarking, and really what it done on a national basis was, reaffirm what we knew, is that our health and social care partnership is not inefficient. What it does is it delivers a high capacity in terms of what we're doing. So in terms of unit costs of providing, care, they're 22% lower than the average, across the benchmarking, but the volume of care that we provide is higher than other areas around that. And actually that makes it really difficult for us at this place. I wish I was sitting here saying we were really inefficient and therefore we can make efficiencies to do this. What it really means is we need to reduce the volume of what we're doing. Paragraphs 12 to 22 of the report sets out and tries to be clearer, and I think it's really important we are clear about the budget delegated to the IJB for 26-27 and the actions that need to be taken to ensure that that budget remains, within the allocated amount. It's clear that this will mean we need to look at, that volume, and that being done through looking at eligibility criteria for services and making sure that the resource is spent and directed to those most at need. We understand that that can be challenging, and recently, you as members will have seen challenges from members of the public and families, and we totally get that. And we've also received recent direction back from the Ombudsman, about being clear about, we need to use the resource depending on the basis of assessed need and within defined levels of provision. So the Ombudsman also recognises, where we are around that. A substantial part of this report, and it does go into real detail at times, is around financial governance within the health and social care partnership, about how the budgets, are set, how the controls on a day-to-day basis, the tiered delegations right down to team managers, to service managers, senior managers, heads of service, the director and ultimately myself have to be implemented to ensure that there's a tiered approach to any authorisation of spend within the partnership. That any spend that is over and above what is allocated cannot be done without it being up that tiered escalation in terms of that. Indeed, there's some real detail, around how resource allocation groups in terms of care, how PCOS in terms of other types of orders, and how HR costs in terms of overtime, etc., is done, is there, and it's all set out in the paper about how we would do that. But just cutting, services alone is not going to get us to where we need to be, and therefore there needs to be review and redesign in terms of what we're doing. And so the paper sets out, how the programme of service reviews will be carried out and the oversight of these service reviews, and indeed making sure that the weekly meetings, that we spoke about from the task force actually follow in terms of looking at that. In terms of what the implications of some of that are, as I say, when we talk about the eligibility criteria rising, that doesn't change the actual need in communities. So what that means is there's identified need, out there in communities, but the eligibility to actually access a service for the council has went up, in terms of that. That then leaves a gap of people who are not actually getting a service. A very clearly identified gap in terms of people who wouldn't be getting a service are people with lower level mental health, challenges. And one of the services that deliver against that on a pan-East Ayrshire basis is the Morven Centre. And that's why there's a specific ask within the report to help the Morven Centre over the rest of this calendar year to actually make sure that they're stable. They were at real risk, of not being able to continue throughout the rest of the year. We can work with the Morven Centre, we can work with the parent organisation Crossreach, and the considerations of the council about where we want to invest our resources going forward in terms of that. So this is not about going in and doing something that the IJB are not doing anymore. I've been clear, their criteria has moved, so these people don't meet the need of their criteria. So this is about early intervention and prevention from the council, just the same as we've done with children and a range of different things as well. This is just a different group to do that. The other area that we would look at in terms of reviewing care and to make sure we're fair in terms of how we're, carrying out reviews and delivering care is about the capacity to do that. So over the last year in detail, we've reviewed about 30%, of all the care packages in detail, and it would take another couple of years to actually get through in detail reviews of all them. What we're saying is that takes too long, and we need to speed that up in terms of doing that. So in paragraph 58, what we're saying is we'll bring in additional purchasing, additional capacity to be able to carry out that review programme, quicker. And as you can see at the end of that, what we're looking for is a 2.5 to 1 return. So for every pound we spend, I want £2.50, back, off the reviews in terms of that. And so that's a proposal that we're seeking for there. The last part of the report, and it reflects the next paper as well, is about members were very clear about how we work alongside NHS Ayrshire and Arran, and how when we provide services, if it has impacts elsewhere, that we should, work closely to make sure we get the most out of that. And that, if we do work that supports the health board, or people accessing the health board, then we do that. So it's more fully described in the second paper, but you can see there's a pan-Ayrshire transformation board being established to do that in the specific areas, there. And it's particularly that one, right care, right place, that folk would understand. That's when you invest in resources, particularly in terms of older people, to keep them away from hospital. So how does the money flow and follow the people? The second one, adults when capacity, is more about, either people with dementia, people with learning disabilities, mental health problems, and how do we make sure they get the care in the right places around that. For paragraph 66, onwards, it details the governance and oversight that we'll have during 26-27 in terms of this. So over and above, the arrangements in terms of officers, been very mindful of what we're doing here and keeping a tight oversight of this, including that additional capacity, through Alec and Ailey's new role doing that. It also cuts across into how we will report back to elected members and to members of the IJB in respect of what we're doing there. Finally, I would point out, that in terms of changes to care arrangements, Marion has very particular role in terms of Chief Social Work Officer in giving advice to both the IJB, to myself and to Council. So I think it's important that Marion is able to set out from paragraph 76 through to 83 that, that the implications of doing, the changes, in terms of what we're doing in terms of health and care around this. The appendix of the paper is the actions agreed at the IJB in terms of how, the targeted changes will take to try and bring the resources back in. And it is also the range of reviews that will be carried out in terms of drawing back that in. So, Provost, I'll conclude for this paper there. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Eddie. I'll open it to the floor. Leader?
Thanks very much. Just 2 points. I thought it was an excellent presentation of where we are, a very open presentation of where we are. And I think just to underline just what you're saying, Eddie, in terms of the eligibility criteria. I was talking to colleagues right across COSLA at the convention just last week, and just we do have very wide and open eligibility criteria that we'll have to look at. Look at reducing that capacity, and I think we've really got to work hard to see what that means for the flow, Eddie, in terms of. And that the Pan-Ayrshire working will be crucial in that, but it will certainly impact it on it, and it'll be interesting to see how that does. And, if there's early trends, we need to go, and if we need to lobby the government and the health minister and all the rest of it, that's where we need to go. Because I think Ayrshire itself does have big issues in terms of poverty, which does impact in health. Also, I'd just like to thank yourself and colleagues for lobbying for the resources to keep the Morven Day Centre going. Personally, I think I had realised just how much the service delivers right across East Ayrshire, not just the North West Kilmarnock. They're based there and they do a lot up there. But I'd just like to thank all colleagues involved in trying to hopefully that we did listen to them, and hopefully this will keep them going, not just in the short term but in the longer term too. Thanks, Provost.
No, thank you, Leader. Councillor Linda Maben.
Thank you, Provost. Got a few things I'd like to just pass comment on, a couple of questions. So the report is puff in parts. There's no point pretending otherwise, but I think it's necessary that we see it all. The seriousness of the position that we're in just now, it's set out very plainly. It's clear in transparency, it's clear in accountability and decision making, and I welcome this direction. I'll continue to work closely with Councillor Maitland as Chair of Performance and Audit in relating to the IJB, and with colleagues in the wider IJB, just to ensure that we don't repeat past mistakes and to make sure that we never find ourselves in this situation again. But there's a few things going through the report. If I look at paragraphs 33 to 39, we're addressing budgetary controls and accountability. I absolutely welcome the statements, but equally I find it quite disappointing that such basics even need stated. So I feel as if I've got to ask, in relation to tiered delegation, surely this must have, or some form of it should already have been in place. In paragraph 34, we're talking about further training and guidance. Now, but then we sort of contradict that by saying it's part of the job description. So why is further training and guidance needed to budget managers if they should already know how to do it? Paragraph 35 mentions reinforcing the requirement to avoid expenditure once budgets are fully committed or any issues should be escalated. Again, would this not be the norm if this spending is required, especially due to legal responsibilities or court orders? Why would issues not already be escalated to senior managers when team budgets are under pressure, as mentioned in paragraph 36? And again, in paragraph 39, why was expenditure not being contained to agreed limits? A few other things. I strongly welcome the additional reviews and spending controls that have been set out in paragraphs 40 through to 52, particularly in paragraphs 50 and 51. Although, again, I've got a concern over the statement that there were not strict, or it's reading as if there were not strict credit controls in place and budgetary information was not already been shared with service and team managers. I'm delighted to see plans for better communication, which is mentioned in para 65, and stronger governance in para 66 to 69. Again, I think much needed and very, very welcome steps. I think Appendix 1 is very clear. If we are serious about improvement, every recommendation must be followed wherever possible. As I mentioned earlier, this full report is tough to read in bits, but very, very necessary. Thank you, Provost, but could I just ask for that I get some clarity on the points I've raised before we move on? Thanks.
Yep, for sure, Councillor Mabin. Thank you. Eddie?
Thanks, Provost. Thanks, Councillor Mabin. I think the points you raise are clearly, absolutely legitimate in terms of what a number of us would have been historically understood as how budgets were managed within, the health and social care partnership. There does seem to be, from the period where there was significant additional funds added to the partnership on a non-recurring basis through COVID, and it was almost spend the money whatever you need to meet the identified need. So we spent to meet the need, and the money was there, but it was non-recurring money. And then the non-recurring money went, and what had happened was your systems and processes had actually not then adjusted back to the system that would have to be there to actually make sure you'd a tiered, approach, to that. Being honest, there were questions when we asked him, but surely a home care manager knows what allocation they have, and that built up. And we had moved, away from that. There was maybe a historic thing, a number of years ago. So it wasn't as clear as that. So the service was delivering to identified need, and the balance between delivering against need and within financial governance, that was out of balance, to be quite honest. And what this paper is doing has been very clear that we need to bring that back into balance. As I said in my, presentation, and this might sound a bit crazy, I actually wish I was bringing to you a paper that said this was a really inefficient organisation, because if it was a really inefficient organisation, I could make savings off the inefficiencies. That's not what's there. There are always efficiencies in every organisation that we do, so it's not to say they're not that. And the paragraphs you point out about organisational structure and savings off that, not only off the, the care package is absolutely correct. And indeed, Craig just brought to us the other day, where 5 quite senior posts will all come out, the structure, etc. So we will do that. Communication, you'll notice that's within the section that's around the transformation board, section, because communication just from us isn't going to help. We need to have people right across the board between health, and ourselves and the other councils understanding what we are able to deliver now in terms of a health and care service, within Ayrshire, because people rightly have got used to expecting a level of service here in East Ayrshire that, quite frankly, we can't afford to deliver with the resources that we've got just now. And that's what we're trying to do in terms of the communication. But the communication is also internal. So the communication is also clearly to staff. And clearly there's no pink papers or anything here. Everything we're saying here is absolutely in public. So the messages, yes, they have to be to the public. I dare say they're messages that actually give concern to people who use services and the families of people who use services, when we talk about how we need to look at eligibility criteria. And they're also messages that have to go to our staff and indeed to elected members, that as an assurance message that we need to give, that we're putting things in place to actually prevent, any of this happening again. So I agree some of the steps that you would go in there would be steps that you would anticipate would be in place, but over a period of time and for the reason of a large injection, I think, of non-recurring money, you know, actually caused us a real difficulty around that.
Thanks, Eddie. Is that okay? Yep. Thanks, Councillor Mabin. Councillor Richardson.
Thanks, Provost. It was just to say I'm delighted and relieved to see recommendation 7 in the paper, which is agreeing to the funding of 150,000 for the Morven Centre until the end of this calendar year. This goes way, way back from early meetings from, you know, with the local Ward 2 councillors, with Stuart Dudgeon, the manager of the Morven Centre. And first of all, I'd like to pay tribute to both Councillor Cowan and Councillor Barton, both Elaine and Caroline, like myself, saw the need for some intervention very, very early, because the new framework that the IJB brought in, as the Chief Executive, as Eddie said, the new framework just doesn't fit with what the Morven Centre actually does. So we were in a situation where social workers out in the street doing their daily job, they were actually referring new clients to the Morven Centre direct, because they knew that the new arrangements didn't fit with what the Morven Centre did, but they saw that the Morven Centre provided services that not only people in Ward 2 require, but as the leader said, people throughout the council area require. So people were getting referred to the Morven Centre, but the Morven Centre weren't getting any funding, which, you know, it was a crazy situation. But to be fair, there were officers in the council, and I've got to pay tribute to Richard Grieveson, who comes out and walkabouts with myself and my other ward councillors. And Richard, on visiting the Morven Centre, I think Richard immediately seen, you know, the need to save the Morven Centre, for want of a better word. And eventually, more and more officers and more people within the council have came round, and I'm just delighted today that at the end of the day, common sense has prevailed, and that 150,000 is going to be made available. It will keep the doors open for a year. We've got to start thinking now how we're going to keep the doors open permanently, but it's a brilliant start.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Councillor Sangster.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Mabin that this paper's been a really tough read. It's hard, and I'm not alone, probably as an elected member, getting contact from constituents who are really upset about budget cuts, etc. And I think it's very important that we remember that we're dealing with human beings here, human beings who are vulnerable. So it's not just about numbers and spreadsheets, it's about human beings. I've got a few concerns, a few questions. I mean, how's the IJB going to ensure that proposed saving measures such as reducing the eligibility criteria are implemented equitably, and that they don't disproportionately impact vulnerable populations? How will the reduction in the eligibility criteria for adult services, for example, impact service users who fall outside the critical need category? What measures are in place to mitigate the impact of delayed care provision on individuals and their families? And how will the IJB measure the success of its service review and redesign initiatives? So what metrics are going to be used to evaluate their impact on these service users? How are we going to ensure that proposed changes will align with statutory obligations and professional standards? And please tell me what contingency plans are in place if the IJB's financial recovery measures fail to achieve the desired outcomes. Please tell me we've got a contingency plan. Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much, Councillor Sangster. Craig?
Yep, thanks, Councillor Sangster. Happy to respond to those. So, and I do appreciate, and it's maybe the point's made a few times about it being a tough read, that this isn't the type of measures, these aren't the types of reports, the recommendations that any of us would want to bring to members, but we absolutely do recognise the need to restore financial balances has been the point that we made several times in this chamber. So the need to get the budget back into balance is clearly the fundamental underpinning rationale behind the budget paper that was considered by the IJB earlier this week, and some content of which is contained within the appendices to this report as well. In terms of the equitable aspects of it, so the quality impact assessment has been done on the overall stuff. The change of eligibility criteria when they were put through before, there was an EQIA done and undertaken round about that. I suppose fundamentally the rationale behind changes to eligibility criteria is about equitable service delivery, so it's about understanding how we can prioritise the money that we've got across the whole population and doing that on an equitable basis. So I suppose the underpinning part in there is about equitable services. As I say, there will be an impact on service users. There's no point in saying that we'll minimise it as best we can. We'll seek to minimise it in every case, but ultimately, if we are reducing care to that critical service level only, then that will have an impact on service users and our carers and a range of other people out there in terms of folk who deliver services as well. So it does have an impact. The EQIAs will seek to minimise that, as I say, to make sure it's done as fair a way as possible. Understand what that impact will be. Clearly, that's on a case-by-case basis because everybody has their own unique set of circumstances that we need to consider. And I think Eddie had mentioned in his own presentation that the assessment will understand actually what does somebody require. The eligibility criteria then sets the level that we as a council or as a health and social care partnership are able to intervene at in terms of our sort of financial ability to deliver those services. I think some of the risks as highlighted in the report is round about the potential for delayed care. So actually somebody being assessed and then identified that there is a care requirement in there, our ability to deliver that care immediately will be curtailed by the actions we're taking here, and that will result in delays, whether that be for people in hospital currently or for people in the communities. That there will potentially be some impact on the timescales of when care can be provided, and also the level of which care can be provided compared to what it might have been previously. The alignment to professional standards I've mentioned, I think there's a whole section of the report that Marion has written in relation to her Chief Social Work Officer responsibility. This isn't just about social work though, there's a broader range in terms of sort of clinical and nursing and the other aspects in there in terms of professional standards, and also the role of the Chief Finance Officer, of which Ailey's been in post for a couple of weeks now. So in terms of her professional standards and responsibilities round about maintaining a balanced budget. So there's a whole range of different moving parts in here that we have to seek to balance and align and get the best opportunities of all of that coming together. The part about what happens if we don't get back into financial balance, I suppose that's why these really difficult decisions are coming, because whilst nobody wants to have to take these decisions, ultimately the reason we're having to do them, the reason they were proposed and agreed through IJB on Tuesday, was round about that this is what we have to do to get back into balance. These are the difficult decisions that we're going to have to take. The key thing for us, and the paper outlines the method, the rationale, but what we have to do now is to deliver against that. So if we say we're going to reduce the care packages, we need to make sure that that's what happens. If we're going to have to curtail provision of care to what's available for budget in terms of cash limited budgets, that's what we have to do. If we're going to do reviews, we set a target saving against it in terms of that's what we want to save through restructures, whatever it is, that's what we have to do. So the processes we've got in place are really strong round about the governance to ensure that what we say we're going to deliver, we do deliver again. So that's going to be the real, I suppose, the challenge. Yes, it will be a challenge. These are tough decisions and tough things to do, but the work that we now need to do is to implement that and make sure that as the year progresses, those 15 or so budget cut actions that are detailed within the paper are delivered fully to allow the budget to come back into balance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Yep, thank you. Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Provost. I also appreciate the explanation by the Chief Executive of the support that's going to come from today's report for the modern day services. And I know colleagues across the chamber have gone to that facility and seen firsthand the value that delivers for our community. And although the actual physical bricks and mortar is in my ward, they definitely do provide service across the whole of the local authority area. So that's reassuring to hear that information today. Moving on to the report itself, the title is Financial Insurance, Health and Social Care. And yeah, I agree with Councillor Mabin saying so it's been a real tough and uncomfortable read. But when I do read the report, the theme of grip and control is through the report. So I think the report in itself does deliver the brief that it was asked for. The one area which I'm interested in hearing more, and it's maybe not for today and it's maybe not for full council, it's perhaps an action for health and social care professionals or the IJB members, is what sort of training and support are we going to put in place for our frontline staff who are going to do these assessments, which I'm sure there'll be robust processes for assessments, but then the actual communication with the people that it's going to touch, how is that explanation going to happen to them? So how is that frontline staff going to be properly trained to deliver that in the way that is, and that the assessments themselves, once they're done, there is a timely process that that individual understands the impact it's going to have on them and on their family. Councillor Sangster is right, all the points, I couldn't agree more with what she said. There is a real level of concern in our communities. Myself, the Provost and some other councillors attended the carers cottage on Monday. So these were adult carers who'd done a training event about recognition and rights. So they're becoming more aware of the rights that they have. So some of the worries that they had was that things were getting taken away from them, which is the reality of what's going to happen. So my ask is, how are we going to make sure our frontline staff are properly equipped to make sure those assessments get done timely, and once a decision has been made, there's no gap that gets relayed back and people are left in limbo, because I do have personal experience of where that has happened, and it may have been a one-off, a unique situation, but if we're doing further assessments and we're putting further people in this sort of scenario, I want to know that our frontline staff know what they're doing and that they have the staff training themselves so that they're confident to do that in the most empathetic and balanced manner possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig?
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Councillor Cowan. So without going into detail of what an assessment looks like, because clearly that's what the professionals do, that's their job, and they are absolutely trained and well capable of undertaking assessments against the agreed criteria. So it's taking the policy and then doing the assessment against that. I suppose the key thing you're picking up there that I just wanted to give some assurance of was the support that we give to frontline staff. So as the last set of eligibility criteria changes were made a year or so ago, then there was a whole range of, I wouldn't call it training, but it was externally commissioned work to understand and allow our staff to be really clear and supported and feel supported round about how to have, I think what it started off by calling it difficult conversations, because these are difficult, but actually what it became quite quickly known as necessary conversations. So it kind of changed its tone. So it wasn't about having a difficult conversation, it was having these necessary conversations, what that looked and felt like, how you could do it in an empathetic way. So yes, the assessment's always going to be good and robust, but how you then relay that information to somebody is really, really important. So the nature of that training, I'll call it training, was to try and get people really very much into the space of understanding how to do that in a really empathetic way. And you're right, it is then about, once the decision's been taken, how do we then put it into action? And it's not do the assessment today and it's put in place for Monday. There'll be an agreed period of time, but it won't be months and months away. It'll be over a relatively short period of time where you'd expect the new arrangements to then kick in. And you're right, the important thing is once that decision's been taken, that we need to follow through on it, we need to make sure that it does happen. And I'm conscious that a number of your constituents will raise issues, and they'll bring that to you as their elected representatives or to other places as well, and they'll come back to us as complaints and we deal with them all through that process. But I suppose the key thing for me is just to know that if the process has been followed the way it's meant to be, that we need to give our staff, we need to give the people making the decisions that confidence and the assurance that when those complaints do come in, that we've got their back, and that they know that as long as the assessment process is robust and it's doing what it's meant to do, then that we will consistently have their back and make sure that those recommendations are implemented fully. And as I said, that the complaints process is there, we'll follow it. We did see a significant increase in complaints, most of which were not upheld in relation to the decisions. The number went to the SPSO, as Eddie's mentioned. The feedback from SPSO has again been, we have followed our guidance, we followed our policy. Nobody likes the outcome of these things, but actually in terms of a policy position of what we're doing, following process, we're doing what we need to be doing. But we'll continue to make sure that those frontline staff are supported as best they possibly can be to have those necessary conversations. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We've got Councillor Douglas, then we'll put Councillor Todd, then the Deputy Leader. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Provost, and can I say I'd thank the Chief Exec for his candour in this report. As other members have said, it does make difficult reading, but particularly around the kind of imbalance around financial governance, I think that's important. I think I've made my point pretty clear in this chamber before. You know, we absolutely cannot have a situation like this again within our IGIB. Turning to a couple of points, and particularly other members have mentioned, but I do absolutely welcome the funding for modern day services. If you indulge me, Provost, you know, our late colleague Councillor Mackay was a passionate advocate for Morven Day Centre in her time in this chamber. And, you know, I first went to visit Morven back in, well, it must have been probably 2017, 2018, and have been regularly visit them to see the fantastic work they do. And I would encourage you all members, I'm sure you do receive emails from Stuart and his team to tell you just exactly what they're doing, and absolutely invaluable. And a constituent of mine who, obviously I won't share their name, but told me that, you know, this service absolutely saved her life. And without doubt, it is incredibly important, and I'm really pleased to see. And I would say pay tribute to, you know, the leader of the council, Councillor Maitland, Councillor Cowan as well, working with myself and Councillor Mabin to advocate for the Morven Centre, because what they do is so important for communities across East Ayrshire. Councillor Cowan made a really strong point that yes, it is based within Kilmarnock North, but their reach is across East Ayrshire. And it's absolutely vital that we do all we can to support them. In terms of page 83 and paragraph 72 for the human resources implications, just wonder, obviously we're talking about engagement, we're talking about communication, and we know that that is all vital, that it's done as early as possible, that how quickly will we intend to be going out to the trade unions and to the workforce to make sure that they are fully negotiated and appraised of what's going on. Thanks.
Yep, for sure. Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Craig?
Thanks, Provost. Just in relation to the trade union, the HR implications part, Councillor Douglas. So yeah, absolutely would expect to engage with them at the earliest opportunity. There is a specific joint a JCC that we have for, particularly for care at home staff, but just recognising the size and the scale of that workforce and the changes that's been in place for a couple of years now. So we'll continue to maintain that engagement, so any changes that are coming through there can absolutely be picked up. In a broader sense, yeah, but absolutely. So through the service review process, we would expect to have maybe not trade union representation on every one of those groups, but we think or anticipate there's going to be significant changes or challenges, then we absolutely want to engage with the trade unions at the relevant time. We've done that before, and we'll continue to do that, particularly, as I say, if we identify there's likely to be a significant impact going forward. But as I say, that JCC with our care at home staff, there was just earlier this week, they actually met, and it's quite a positive place to go to take issues, the opportunity for them to raise issues with us, but also for us to start to share some of these important messages as well. The other part of HR implication in terms of the broader staff awareness of what's going on here kind of feeds into Councillor Mabin's point as well around about that training process. So the training, as well as the training being about this is what you can do, this is what you can't do, and actually reinforcing those messages. A lot of that is the training is the opportunity to get these people together in a room and reinforce some of these really strong messages that we're hearing from the chamber over the last number of months, and again today, around about the importance of financial balance and not letting these things slip. So those opportunities to really reinforce those messages with staff will be taken over the next number of months, and they'll continue for the next year or so as well, just as we really bed down any new arrangements that we're talking about here.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Provost. Just on that, I think in terms of at the relevant time, I think just as soon as possible, I would say, obviously, to make sure that you are engaging with the staff and the trade unions, because that is important. You know, we need to make sure we're getting the comms right to our service users who absolutely rely on our services, but equally the staff that are delivering it, because if morale is low or they are not feeling they've been properly listened to, then that's going to have a real impact on the services that we know so many vulnerable people across East Ayrshire absolutely rely on. Thank you, Provost.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Douglas. Councillor Todd.
Thank you, Provost. On the theme of communication, I went along on a visit to the carers centre as well, and I mean the brilliant work that carers do for their family in whatever aspect, full-time care or part-time care, whatever. But the message that they gave across was one of not just resources, but communication and information. And it was all about that part where somebody gets released from hospital into full-time care with a carer in their own house. The carers felt exposed in terms of they didn't know where to go. They didn't know what support they could get. They didn't know who to go to for financial support if they got that. They didn't know about the next steps. So I would really like, if possible, I don't know if it's the Health Board or at IJB, but I would really like an enhanced package of information and that type of support for carers, because that was the message that was loud and clear from the carers at the centre. Thanks.
Yep, thank you. Like, as you well say, it was very loud and clear, for sure. Craig?
So happy to pick up if that remains an issue. Absolutely happy to pick up on it. What we've done over the last couple of years, using some of the carers money that we get, earmarked money from Scottish Government, is actually to fund a couple of posts through the carer centre. So there's a post within both of the hospitals, University Hospital Ayr and Cross House, to provide that unpaid carer support. The feedback we get from it is incredibly positive. So both of the owners from the carer centre feedback regularly in terms of the impact that it's having. I don't think the other two areas do that. So there's clearly some issues within the hospital about the level of support you get depending on where you stay. But I think we all recognise, particularly as we do start to tighten up in the eligibility criteria, the likelihood of people leaving hospital with a lesser level of support or potentially no support and going home with unpaid support in there from husbands, wives, etc. That will increase into the future. So this becomes a really important aspect of it. As I say, it is there, it's working really, really well. But if the feedback you're hearing as recently as this week is that it's still not as good as it can be, we'll certainly pick up that conversation and see if we can enhance it further.
Yep, no, brilliant. Good to hear some level of progression happening there for sure. Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Provost. There's nothing I could disagree with anything that's been said in the chamber this morning. If I could back up on Councillor Sangster's comment from about that criteria again. It's not this authority, it's a neighbouring authority where I have witnessed where controls are not put in place about spending and the qualifying criteria for it. I will not name names. But people close to me where I have witnessed an amputee sent home in November, where their health has deteriorated badly with a hospital bed with no care package sent along with that. There is no financial support that's been sent along with that, and I have watched an old woman, 76-year-old, try and care for her husband who's 6'2" at the time. He doesn't get out of the bed, the dignity, having to put a sheet below him because she can't get him out of the bed. She's having to pay out a small pension for assistance to come in and try and help her once a day for an hour in the morning. It's not nice, and it's something I think that shouldn't happen because it's been said that we're human beings and they're human beings, but I know the implications going forward and being able to deliver what we want to deliver against what we can afford to deliver. So the criteria is really important and we make sure we get that right. On another note, on eligibility criteria, it's one that I've already raised in the chamber, and it's round about the aids and adaptations and how the early intervention with that is going to be preventative and further implications on health and their well-being going forward. We're all aware that there was an underspend, £600,000 on that last year. I think it's really important that we do not have that underspend and that preventative measures that the aids and adaptations can take. I'm just looking for assurances as we are. And the paper does say at the very top it's financial assurances. I would be looking for that to be spent this year. So I know there's eligibility criteria for care packages, but as far as aids and adaptations goes, it's important that we get that right, and that's money is spent this year. So I'm looking for assurances on that.
Craig?
So I understand that the aids and adaptation budget was fully spent the year just ended as in 2 days ago. So my understanding was, and it might not be absolute to the last penny, but it was spent or committed. So yes, there was underspend 24-25, but 25-26 that wasn't the case. And going forward, clearly the budget's not changed, so the same budget is available. But I would just make it clear in terms of eligibility criteria applies to any level of care that people need, so that does include aids and adaptations as well. Although the eligibility criteria changed previously and we spent all the money last year, so that would suggest that even with a tightening criteria, there are still sufficient people meeting the needs of that, and the aids and adaptations budget is sufficient to cover it. Going forward, we'll keep it under regular review, so I can't assure us or provide assurance that we'll spend every last penny of it, but we'll remain under regular review to make sure that we're getting the maximum value out of it, that we absolutely recognise the preventative nature of some of these things in terms of keeping people at home and the type of care that can be provided in a different way. So I would absolutely give the assurance that it will remain under regular review to make sure we're getting the best opportunities from the budget that's available to us.
Thank you. Members, I've got some people on a list to speak. I've got Councillor Ingram, Councillor Cowan, Councillor Maitland, and again Councillor Richardson. So Councillor Ingram.
Thank you, Provost.
The point that I was going to raise has already been covered by Councillor Todd in regard to the communication, information and supports that are available or that we need to look at again, given the change to care for our carers, some of whom might be young carers, and that's obviously going to directly impact them. So while I wanted to make that point, it's already been answered in response to Councillor Todd. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councillor Ingram. And I know you yourself are also a big champion of the Carer Centre, so much appreciated. Councillor Kevin.
Thank you for letting me back in, Provost. It's just a quick information note for Craig's benefit. Eric Sulland was present at the adult carers event on Monday, so he heard firsthand the real life examples of where we have had communication black holes or where the information hasn't been readily available. And it was a phrase that you've heard before, that people felt they were getting moved from pillar to post. And obviously, if it's a trying time in their life, any way we can make that more visible or readily available. But certainly, Eric heard it firsthand, Craig.
Yeah, you did. Thank you. Councillor Maitland.
Thank you very much, Provost. We've talked, all of us, about how tough this paper has been, and I don't plan to go back over that. But what I would like to say is this is a very honest paper, and it's out there in the public domain, and it's a strong communication of what we are facing and what measures we are taking. And as you will have heard from Councillor Mabon and Councillor Sangster, we are going to be asking a lot of tough questions as the year goes on. Last year was probably the hardest year. I think I said this at the end of council last year. Last year was the hardest year I ever had as a councillor, but I think this year's going to be hard. But this year we have all come together, and I think that's important the public see that. And one small note is putting out communication, how we communicate. IGB are now going to be recorded and out in public, just like we're discussing here today. So it's an honest paper, this is an honest discussion, and the IGB is going to be out there for the public to see and to scrutinise too. So thank you very much, and thank you to all my colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Maitland. Councillor Richardson, you want to come back in?
Thanks, Provost. It was just to come in on the back of the Deputy Leader's comments there. Jim made some good points about, aids and adaptations. And I'm really pleased to hear from Craig there that all of the money that we had available in the last financial year was eventually used. It's only as you go through your term as a councillor and you deal with different types of cases that you learn things and you pick up things. So I've dealt with a few aids and adaptations cases now, and from speaking to officers, the one thing that I didn't realise that it still doesn't sit well for me is that the money that we have, we've got a total budget for aids and adaptations, but we then split that total budget into a budget for council homes and a budget for housing association properties and a budget for private home ownership. And the people that are coming to us for these aids and adaptations, it's health issues. And I don't understand how the fact whether you own your home or you rent from a housing association or you rent from the council, what effect does that have in the case? To me, it shouldn't have any effect in the case. We should have one budget for aids and adaptations. And if you need your house to be to have a stair lift, or you need a walk-in shower room, or you need your bathroom to be brought downstairs, to me, it shouldn't matter what your home ownership status is. That shouldn't really affect the case, because when I had a specific case, and I'm trying to remember the specific aspects of it, but let's just say the customer was a council tenant. The budget had been spent for the council homes, but we had money available in the other area. And to me, I was thinking, well, there's budget there. It shouldn't really, the reason that the person that rents from the council, this shouldn't affect this case. So that was the point I was wanting to make. Why do we split the whole budget for aids and adaptations into these separate elements? Because to me, it's just over bureaucracy.
Sure, thank you. Blair?
Through you, Provost, thank you. In terms of the split between general fund expenditure and housing revenue account expenditure, In Scotland, a housing revenue account is a legally ring-fenced account for recording income and expenditure related to council housing. So that's why there would have to be very clear separate budget arrangements in place, which is underpinned by the Housing Scotland Act as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Blair. Eddie?
So just to simplify it down, the money comes from different places. So housing associations, they get an allocation. It's a housing allocation, although it then goes through to the IJB, HRAs for our houses, and then the council we use, you know, like we used to call it private sector grants, but there was so the money actually comes to us for different places. That's why, you know, it ends up, you know, like that. It's not that we have one budget that we then deliberately allocate it into three. That's not what happens. It's actually three budgets we're just running at one time.
That's helpful. Yeah, thank you. And members, if any have not visited the AIDS and Adaptations team, it is absolutely incredible what AIDS and Adaptations there is out there for people. So I'm sure they would be very happy to have you and show you. Members, are we okay with the paper? Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 6. This is for the Ayrshire Transformation Board. And again, I'll bring Eddie in to go through the report. Thanks, Eddie.
Thanks, Provost. I'll be fairly brief with this report. I mean, our discussions previously around sustainability of health and social care, it was clear that it was interrelated between what we do in terms of the council, the IJB and the health board. But we work as a whole system in Ayrshire in terms of all three councils use the health services, etc. So as we know, if we can be really efficient, you know, in terms of what we're doing, you know, like if another area is struggling, the hospital's still full, so the impact's the same on, you know, like our residents. So in order to address a situation, you know, like where both the health board, the councils and the IJBs are all struggling, we don't anticipate that MD is going to come in and give us huge amounts of extra money to do this. So the only way to actually improve the outcomes for people in Ayrshire is for us to actually work together. And the proposal of how we work together is here within this report. And you can see it outlines, you know, like who would be involved in that and how that would report. The proposals, you know, within it do focus on the areas we kind of touched on. It's how do we make sure we invest in the right place. Folk who go back as far as the care report, etc., in terms of health will know if we invest appropriately within the community, that should save money in the wider, more acute services. So how do we move resources about? How do we make sure that adults with incapacity don't get stuck in the system? You know, again, as a council, we looked at how we fund power of attorney, and again, we'll go back and revisit, you know, like that. We have invested quite heavily in terms of telehealth, telecare and digital. So again, looking at that and also looking at communications in terms of, we spoke earlier around that. So this paper just seeks endorsement from council that in terms of working on a pan-Ayrshire basis, you know, like we will do that in order to make sure the resources that are available for health and care are actually invested in the best ways possible.
Thanks, Eddie. Councillor Linda Maben.
Thanks, Provost. I'm sure, like all other elected members in here, we clearly all recognise the significant challenges that the councils, along with the health board, are currently facing. So I totally welcome the development of this plan. I'm encouraged by the commitment shown to addressing the issues together. And I mean, there's clearly different issues within the three different councils because of the different way of working. Could I just ask that we ensure we get the regular updates, because it makes it easier for us as elected members to then provide informed support and decisions throughout the implementation process. But absolutely, just to welcome it. Thanks.
Yep, thank you. And yep, we're getting nods.
I think that section of communications is we need to be really targeted in that. So if one of the things we can absolutely say our elected members and board members, etc., should be one of the targets.
Thank you. Leader.
Thanks. I think you after May the 7th will have a new whatever government that is. I think, as I think we were discussing at Glasgow last week, there'll be a kind of 100 days for the government to settle in and look at what its priorities. And I think your changes and looking at working collaboratively on an Ayrshire basis is something, whatever the government is, we'll be looking at authorities to look at collaboration. And I'm just was wanting to put my marker down just as soon as we have a new government, whatever government that is, that we lobby hard for resources to look at collaborations amongst the three Ayrshire's.
Thank you. Councillor Linton.
Thanks very much, Provost. I welcome this paper. I think it's a very positive paper, Eddie. I think I was involved with the IGB in the shadow year, and I think, you know, if we'd got this right back then, I think this would have been a much more good way to behave. I think I don't see in the current setup that good behaviour gets rewarded. I think we do a really good job of keeping our people in their own homes in East Ayrshire. You listed a number of things with technology and whatnot. I'd add to players in the high amenity housing that we've focused on. This is a positive thing. This keeps people in their communities and not in Crusoe's Hospital. But I definitely think this is a step in the right direction. I just maybe wish it had happened a good number of years ago.
Yep, thank you. Members, is everybody else okay online? Is all right? Okay, members, I'll be happy to endorse the paper. Yep, thank you. Eddie, thank you. So we're moving on to the strategic response to population rebalance, and I'll bring in Ian Tuff, who's supported by Amy today. Thank you.
Thanks, Provost. Morning, members. East Ayrshire has strong but geographically diverse communities, and population and demographic change is something that cuts across all aspects of council work and has significant impacts on our communities. Whether that is historic population decline in the south of the authority or projected population growth in the north, it has profound impacts on how services are delivered now and into the future. This report provides an update on the work that has been taken over the last year to better understand our changing demographics and how the outcomes from that work is being used to inform the development of our strategic response. The significance of the impact is such that demographic change has been recognised as a strategic risk and was added to the Council's corporate risk register in the last year. The local changes that we are seeing in East Ayrshire also mirror a national imbalance between East and West. Across Scotland, there is a contrast between western and rural areas which are experiencing significant population decline and areas in the east of the country which are growing through significant levels of inward migration. The local reflection of the national challenge is one of the reasons that East Ayrshire was selected as a pilot area to benefit from the Scottish Government's Addressing Depopulation Action Plan funding. Grant-funded work to date has enabled the Council to introduce a dedicated additional resource to provide research and advisory capacity, and I'm delighted therefore to be joined by my colleague Amy Fraser, who has led this work. The work that Amy has led has included research into trends and potential drivers for population imbalance, as well as undertaking data analysis to understand our demography and what has influenced the shift in population. In general terms, East Ayrshire's population has stayed broadly constant over the last 20 years, with a small increase of just under 0.5% since 2001. As of June 2024, East Ayrshire's estimated population was 121,420. East Ayrshire follows a similar trend to Scotland, with the effects of a lower birth rate in recent decades being seen in reducing numbers of younger people. Conversely, high birth rates following the Second World War are reflected in an increasing population of those over 70 years of age. By 2050, however, our population is projected to decrease by 10%, down to 108,227. And the picture varies greatly when we consider the projections for our different communities. Areas in the south of the authority, specifically Ballochmyle, Doon Valley, Cumnock and New Cumnock, are projected to see population decline, and alongside this, an increasing dependency ratio. Conversely, the wards covering Kilmarnock West and Crosshouse and Alnwick are projected to grow and diverge in size from other areas due to positive net migration. Interestingly, Kilmarnock South is also projected to grow, but in this case the change is attributed to low natural change due to its younger median age and smaller proportion of dependents. At paragraph 35, members will note that our commitment is to rebalance and stabilise East Ayrshire's population by committing to further integrate population sustainability into the Council's strategic planning arrangements, particularly in relation to development planning, housing, economic development, transport and health policy. Our research and analysis has led to the identification of 5 strategic objectives, which are proposed as a focus of our strategic response. Number 1, to stabilise and grow the population in areas of decline by supporting local regeneration, investment and community-led initiatives. To promote balanced growth across the authority by strengthening infrastructure and connectivity in rural and southern communities. To enhance economic opportunities through allocating land for uses, employment, skills development and business support, tailored to local strengths and future industries. To plan for demographic change by ensuring that health, housing, education, social care provision are sustainable and responsive to an ageing population, and to collaborate regionally and nationally to align East Ayrshire's approach with wider population and economic strategies, maximising the impact of investment and learning from other pilot areas. As already noted, Provost, Scottish Government addressing depopulation action funding was secured to support delivery of this work over 2024 to 2026. In addition, we are pleased that a further funding bid for next year was approved on the 18th of March, and it's proposed therefore that the Council match the Scottish Government allocation to support the development of a population rebalance implementation plan. Taken together, the proposed objectives and supporting population rebalance implementation plan will set out the strategic framework within which we will seek to address the identified challenges. By taking these steps, the Council will continue to lead proactive, evidence-based action to rebalance and stabilise our population, strengthen communities and secure a sustainable future for all residents. Provost, with those comments, along with Amy, we're happy to answer any questions, and the recommendations are at paragraph 2 for members' consideration. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you very much. Members, I'll open it to the floor. Councillor Linda Maven.
Thanks, Provost. What I'm about to say is not going to surprise probably 99% of people in the room. And I'm not saying it because I want to open my previous debate. I appreciate that the decision's been made and I understand that, but just for the record, paragraph 4 highlights a significant population decline in parts of Cumnock and Doon Valley. Cabinet's previously agreed to reassign up to the 5 million in the core funding. I get that. I spoke against it at the time and I continue to stand by my comments because this funding was originally intended to support the southern area of the authority. I still do believe that it could have been used for initiatives and address the challenges faced there. Things like rural transport links to enable the residents better access to employment, to training and for any other essential opportunities. So I just wanted to put that in the record again.
Yep, no, completely agree. Thank you. Councillor Sangster.
Oh, sorry. Is it me, sorry? Oh,
it is.
Oh, right, yeah. Apologies, I couldn't quite hear you there. I've got a few points to raise, and it's round about education and depopulation. I'm conscious though that there's not any education colleagues in chambers, but I will kind of raise a few points because I was looking to see what kind of current work we have around the kind of demographic change and its impact on the school estate. You know, recent census data indicates that there is a significant shift in population, a 300 child differential since the last published census, and a reduction of approximately 3,000 children in our schools since 2007. So it would be interesting to know what modelling's been used to kind of project the school roll trends over the next maybe 5 to 10 years. I'm also conscious of the kind of positive work that we have around SL 33, 66, 99. You know, it would be good to have a wee update on the positive work happening across these areas, you know, specifically how they are helping us manage the school estate more effectively, enhance the curriculum offer, support attainment and inclusion, and are we confident that these projects are keeping us ahead of the curve and responding to the kind of demographic change you know, compared to other local authorities. And my last point is just regarding partnership with working with the third sector. What kind of current interfaces, if you like, exist, you know, with third sector partners, particularly regarding, I'm thinking along the lines of ESN support, foundation apprenticeships, and are there going to be opportunities to further expand the third sector involvement to support sustainability kind of in smaller schools and communities that are kind of experiencing this kind of depopulation? Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Eddie?
Thanks. So, particularly in terms of scoping, you know, about the impacts of demography in our school estate. So that is something that we do across, you know, Linda's service, our planning colleagues, and, you know, Andrew's service in terms of that. So there is a board that we actually look at that and has been served. You know, Amy's been feeding into that. These are some of the really serious questions that we will have as council. You know, if we look at some of our villages where the bank is gone, where the church is gone, you know, like the thing that's left as a core is the school that's left there. And as the population goes down, there are very small number of children in that. So there are thing about, you could look at it and you could be a statistician in it and actually say what's the unit cost of providing that. There's another way of looking at it, and it was some of the discussions we had around opportunities versus small secondary school at Doon. What are the chances, the different chances of options you get to do that? But there's also the bit about what happens if you take that last core thing out of a village, you know, what does that mean for the village? And these are the genuine discussions that as a council that we're going to, you know, have to have around that. There is, you know, like, and I'm sure we'll be delighted to bring back some of the reports around what we're doing in skills and learning and how that service in skills and learning and engaged across into employability now is obviously looking at that, so we can bring that back. And I know there is a range of engagement. You know, I can think of some of the PEF work that goes on between schools and the third sector as well. So there's some of them, Councillor Sangster, that I think we'll be happy to take away and come back in a kind of consolidated way. I suppose the bit I would want to emphasise is that there's planning across the council in terms of the work around demography and impact on all the services across the council that we're looking at just now.
Thanks, Eddie. Ian?
Thanks, Provost. And just to add to Chief Executive's comments, Councillor Sangster, we had the opportunity for a discussion earlier in the week with your group, and so I had the benefit of being able to anticipate that perhaps being an issue you would raise. So I have spoken to Linda. Unfortunately, she's not here today, but those messages are passed on to her and very much reflects Eddie's position on that. So I think we would get reports back. On the second point, you also raised just about the wider input of third sector and other partners, actually. So the work that we have done has been very much through a partnership lens. It's not just purely about the impact on council for us. So third sector is very much in that. So just to reassure you, they're, you know, very much part of any proposals we're taking forward from today. Thanks. Thank you, Provost.
Yep, thank you. Is that okay, Councillor Sangster? Yeah, it's an important point for sure. Members, just so you know where you are in your list of speaking, I've got Councillor Kyle, Councillor Cogley, Councillor Boyd, Councillor Watts, Deputy Leader, Councillor Lennox and Councillor Maitland, and anybody else that maybe want to come in. Maybe shouldn't have said all that out loud. So Councillor June Kyle online.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Ian. Just a few things. Income at the getting the Cairn Road project, we're getting another further. Not bringing any new folk in. But you know, are there any plans in place to attract and retain young families in the areas? And also, are we involving the local communities in any decisions about future of the schools in these areas?
Yep, thank you. Ian?
Again, Provost had an opportunity earlier in the week to pick up some of that. Councillor Kyle raised some of those parts. So particularly around stimulating local communities and bringing things in, that's very much part of one of the objectives within this proposal here. It's, you know, it's a key work stream for us to do that. Whether it's housing, whether it's stimulating business, whether it's connectivity. So these things are very much hardwired. That's why we've set out those high level strategic objectives. They are very much aligned to the issues Councillor Kyle raises. I suppose it's making, the trick is how do we do that on the ground, and I think having the additional support we're getting from Scottish Government and match funding some of that through council resources as well will let us do some more place-based work around all of that, Provost. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Kyle, is that okay?
Yes, that's fine. That's great. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Thank you. Councillor Cogley.
Thank you. And Ian and Amy, thank you very much for the paper, because I think it highlights a number of issues that we're all very familiar with and conscious of. So it's good to see the statistical data to support probably what we all already think and know. Interestingly, debate night came from Ullapool about 2 weeks ago, and exactly the same issues were aired from Ullapool. So it really is something that's affecting all of us. And what I would hope is that if there is government funding to do the research, that there would perhaps be some government funding to help remedy the issues that the research is raising. So I guess that's a bit of a watch this space, but one would certainly be optimistic that that would be the case. In terms of the demographic changes, and we've talked about East and West nationally, and North and South as far as our as far as East Ayrshire is concerned, but just to highlight the stark change within my own ward, the Irvine Valley, and the population changes on page 122. If you compare 2011 with 2022, those changes are absolutely huge. So it's not quite as simple as North and South. It is very significant within Ward 6. So certainly whatever we're doing in the south of the authority, I would hope we would also be doing within Ward 6 too, please. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, just on Councillor Colby's first point about Scottish Government and the national approach to the Scottish Government have a national strategy around all of this. I missed that debate. Might have been a helpful a bit of viewing just in the context of what we're doing as well. But Scottish Government funding is right across the board. That phenomenon of the split from west to east nationally is recognised too, and you know it's not a difficult thing to shift, but the Scottish Government does have that national approach already in place. The second point, yes, absolutely, it's not just purely a north-south split for us, it's everything in between as well. And interestingly, for members in Kilmarnock South as well, you'll see that there is some other pockets of positive activity too, where clearly there's something happening that is showing a positive projection as well in some of our communities. So thanks, Councillor Galway.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Sounds promising. Councillor Boyd.
Thanks, Provost. Really interesting paper and statistics there. I think one of the big factors is the geography and particularly transport. You know, so I'm coming back up the road last night, the M74 to get home, with the M74 and the M77 with the sat-nav. But sometimes I like coming over the A70 because I like the outdoor scenery. So I come off it last night with this paper in mind. So when you come off the motorway in the A70, within half a mile, you're doing to a single lane at one bit. And for there, for Douglas to Muircut, the road is truly awful. So the communications are terrible, you know, to get into Cumnock. And then the other way to get to the M74 for here is up, as Councillor Cogley is saying, the Irvine Valley. So I feel Cumnock, New Cumnock, you know, I love the areas, you know, I like Hillwalk, Cairntable, Blackcraig, it's fantastic, but the communications are poor, and I think that's a big factor. And I'm just I've looked at the map a few times, and, you know, Ayrshire's got a population of 30 million, and we've got a terrible connection to the M74. You know, really, if the logic would be, and I know the money is not there for a dual carriageway for Douglas over to Belfield, which would skirt along Muircut, so there'd be easy access from Cumnock, etc. Another way to go to Dumfries as well, and I'm sure that'll come up. That's a poor route as well. So I really think we're hindered by poor communications when you get down to Cumnock and the Doon Valley. I think that's a big factor, and it's a difficult one. You know, there might be more discussion in this, but you know, certainly the road network. You know, it's really dated. All these blind bends, it's exhausting driving it. You know, so yeah, big factor, and also. You know, a lot of kids go to university, you know, maybe was it up to 50% in the late 90s we want. So when a lot of kids leave school and go to university, Glasgow or Edinburgh, Stirling even, they might not come back, you know, and it's attracting people back into the area. So you want trades and jobs. And I notice there's another paper coming up with the wind farms, which, you know, that is an opportunity for folk with skills to come back into the area. So we need jobs as well, you know, to attract people in, and also the apprenticeships, which I know we're working on. But to me, the big thing is communications. I'll be interested to see what some of the other local members think in the debate here.
No, thank you. Councillor Boyd. Ian?
Thanks, Provost. Councillor Boyd raises an issue that's consistently raised as part of this work around connectivity and infrastructure, and particularly some of those routes that he's mentioned there. So again, it's the reason why within the paper you'll see that commitment around a strategic objective to look at that. It very much aligns to other policies and strategies of the council, whether that's through the Roads Alliance or through our development planning opportunities as well. So it's it's a point that's made regularly to us. And just again on young people and the opportunities for college, we did do a bit of dedicated, quite committed work around talking to young folk. Maybe Amy could give us an update on the work that we've done with the college.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Councillor Boyd. Yeah, through our kind of research phase, we done a targeted bit of work with Ayrshire College, and that looked at specifically sending out questionnaires via class reps and just their kind of student bulletins. And it was really targeted at East Ayrshire residents aged 16 to 30. And that was to find out a bit more about how they felt about the area, how they feel about, you know, that potential moving away for different opportunities. And I suppose a lot of it is that if people want to stay here, they probably will find a way. But then a lot of it is, again, the perception of if young people have in mind that they want to move away and we can't change how they feel about that. But I suppose it's making it easier for them to stay within this area and travel and commute to university. And that was kind of what we got on that, speaking to the young people, is that they maybe don't feel as though these opportunities exist down here. So then again, it's changing that perception, showing them that there are opportunities in this area for them to stay. Again, the commuting stuff isn't not always within our gift to change. But then again, that engagement with young people was really successful in getting to see how they feel. And it was just a small snippet of young people that attend the college. So I think in our next kind of steps, we'll build upon that and work with either our education colleagues to target even younger and seeing how they feel when they're at school as well.
Yep, thank you both. Yep, thank you. Councillor Watts online.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you to Ian and Amy for this report. It is, in my view, it's very positive with the things and the plans that we've got in there. Depopulation is a problem across the whole of East Ayrshire, but I mean in the south, obviously my ward here in Cumnock and New Cumnock and Ballock Mile, which is obviously Councillor Simmons' area as well. So yes, the ways we need to look at this, in my view, we do need to improve transport infrastructure. You know, the A76 is the spine that connects Kilmarnock down to New Cumnock. And I've said before, and I'll obviously continue to say, that really needs looking to be upgraded. We need to look at that. We need to look at buses because the villages, and some of the villages really are not, and we all know this, are not connected properly to the main community hubs. We need to look at the trains, something that, you know, everyone will know. I'll go on about trains, but we need to look at a new station for Mocklin. We need to look at turnaround points for New Cumnock, which would increase the capacity that we have within our rail network. But then obviously the report then goes on with jobs and housing. And all of these come together and we need to continue to work with it. But I'm very supportive, obviously, of this report. So thank you, Provost.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Watts. Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Amy, Ian, for the paper. I'm really delighted that the government came forward and we got the funding, and the result of that was Amy in that permanent post, and looking forward to where this goes. I'm not going to get into a great detail run about the statistics on the paper. They're there. I think stabilising our communities for the last kind of 20 years, the decline happened 40 years ago. We're deindustrialised, take away our mining communities, taken away the engineering for Kilmarnock. That's where it all started. But we know East Ayrshire is a region of incredible beauty, to the headwaters of the River Aire, and Councillor Boyd just touched on that, where he came for the weekend, to the stunning views round about Lochdown and all the way into Kilmarnock to Deancastle Country Park. Residents in East Ayrshire have got substance and grit. We saw that when we were fighting for our industries, and that's all well documented. For the miners, down to the workforce at Johnny Walker's, but it wasn't just the workforce, it was the communities that got together and they were fighting, not just for their jobs, but for the communities. We're proud of our mining and industrial heritage in the south, to the vibrant communities in the growing hub that is Kilmarnock. We're a place of deep roots, but the roots are being tested. We're currently facing a democratic crossroads. Projections in this paper show a worrying trend of depopulation in the south, particularly among the young working age population. And that is where, as one of the elected members for Ward 8, that I would like to keep my focus. I know the paper sets out different challenges of depopulation in the south and the growth in the north. I wish I was facing the challenge of growth in the south, but I'm not. This isn't just a set of statistics in the council report. It's a fundamental threat to the way of life in our towns and villages in the south. So tackling this decline is a serious issue for this and for future generations. If I take the local economy, it's a lifeblood, but a shrinking population creates that economic vacuum that we're all aware of. When our young people from Ayrshire colleges and the local academies feel they've got to move to Glasgow or even further afield, as we've already said, to the East Coast for opportunities, we lose their skills. But we don't just lose their skills, we lose their spending powers as well. As the population thins, local businesses in places like Cotton, Dumelton and New Cumnock, they're struggling to survive. It becomes harder to justify new investment when the customer base, the youngins, are disappearing. So to save our economy, we must move beyond what we're seeing as commuter town models. We need to create communities that are a destination for industry, for innovation again, ensuring that local jobs for local people is a reality and not just something and a saying that rolls off the tip of our tongues. It's been touched on earlier around about schools and education. That's protecting the heartbeat. Nowhere has the impact of depopulation felt more than in our schools. In East Ayrshire, we have seen the significant investment in our education super campuses, the William Macavani and Barney campuses, and modern facilities. But these are buildings that needs pupils to fill them. When families leave, we know the school rolls fall. Lower numbers lead to reduced funding, which can threaten the breadth of the curriculum and the extracurricular activities. We risk a future where a child in a rural East Ayrshire village has fewer educational choices than one in a major city. It's something that we can't accept. Our schools are the heart of our communities. If the heart stops beating because the families aren't there, the village around it begins to fade and becomes lifeless. If we look at infrastructure, and it's been touched on round about the buses and the lifelines, we need to look at it seriously. To keep people here, we've got to address the essentials. And I'm going to look at housing as part of that. It's a roof over their head and a way to get round with transport. In housing, we face a dual challenge. We've got empty properties in some areas and a lack of modern affordable social housing in others that will meet the future changing demographics. We need housing, social, affordable and private, that meets the needs of 21st century families. Homes that are energy efficient and digitally connected. Housing need and demand assessments will tell us that we don't need housing in rural villages because of predicted depopulation. Without the vision and the will to stabilise and grow communities, that would be the case. We can only attract people if we're brave and take measures to buck the trend and deliver the demographic changes. We need to look at the restrictions and the policy regulations and the planning criteria that stop rural developments outside the curtilage of villages. Places like the legals feed in to local economies. Statistics that were just placed here yesterday, since 2023, 52% of rural applications were denied permission outside that curtilage in comparison with an 80% approval rate in built-up areas. We need more places like the legals that could meet the health and well-being requirements, looking out over the hills and into somebody's back window. Housing's useless if we don't use it and we're left stranded. In many of our towns and villages, and our bus infrastructure is quite literally a lifeline. For many of the buses, the only way to reach Crosshouse Hospital, a job interview in Kilmarnock, or even for a job in a shop in Morgan. As the population declines, commercial bus providers have cut the unprofitable routes, further isolating our most vulnerable residents. Do they care? Not a choice. But we must tackle depopulation to ensure public transport remains a viable, frequent service rather than a rare luxury. We as a council need to assist the communities starved of transport links that can connect them to their crucial services. So to conclude for me, the decline of population in the south is not an inevitable fate. I remember sitting where Craig's sitting today next to the leader, and Eddie provided some of the stark statistics that we face in the south. I'm saying, I'm glad you told me. We can sit here and do nothing and accept it, or we can do something. So what we need to do is we need a perspective in industrial units. And if ambition is to be achieved, we need them in the south on the scale of Muirfield. We're all familiar with the 9cc group and why it was created. The 9cc group have a vision, is to create a lasting legacy for our communities and build a better place to live, work, play and visit. In future years, the communities of the 9cc area will be vibrant, connected, resilient and inclusive with a strong wellbeing economy. New wealth being created and people of all ages and backgrounds involved in making this a better place where the people want to work, play and visit. If we want to thrive in East Ayrshire, we can't afford and sit here to be passive. We need a strategy that joins the dots, where affordable housing attracts families when we're migration, families fill our schools, and a healthy population sustains the bus routes, the trains, and the local shops that make life livable and less a chore. We owe it to the miners, the farmers, the engineers who built the communities to ensure it doesn't just survive, but it grows. Mask is simple, and I know it's a very complicated and multifaceted, but we'll have to make our rural communities a place where people choose to stay, choose to work, and choose to raise the next generation.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. Well acknowledged around the table. Okay. Okay, I've got Councillor Maitland, Councillor Lennox and Deputy Provost. Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, and I don't know quite how to follow that, so just a couple of observations here. Thank you very much for the paper. Love the data. I think this is it's so informative. The proposed objectives that we see here, paragraph 35. This data will inform how we move forward. But a couple of observations here, and I think it was the Glasgow fire that actually brought it all home to some of us. It's easier to commute to Edinburgh University from Kilmarnock than it is to get to Paisley University. It takes, there's better connections, and the fire, I think, showed how many of our own young people were affected and impacted trying to get up and down. We saw the buses getting overloaded, etc. However, when Eddie talked about the heart of the schools, and I know others, schools being the heart of the communities, we buck the trend in short lease. Our population is going up. So you know what I'm going to say. If we're going to have to plan ahead for schools, then I think we should be looking at a secondary school for the Shortleys area. If the schools are the heart of the community, we empty our young people out of our community every single day and send them to schools all over Kilmarnock. So that's about the only ask I would have of that. The banks have gone, the churches aren't as busy, the schools are the heart of our community, our primary schools, especially in Shortleys, are. So I really couldn't follow what what Jim said there as my deputy leader. So I'll just leave it at that. But we're not all on depopulation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maitland. Yep. Deputy Provost.
Thanks. It's quite a substantial paper, and I'm looking at the figures for ANIC and how it's going to grow. But I think we need to look at the LDP 3 as well, because in ANIC we've already got substantial house building, and then we're going to be looking at building another 800 houses in Alton Hull, probably consume the whole of Kilmores eventually. No coalescence for me. But when we look at LDP 3, can we keep getting told that developers want to build in ANIC? Developers want to build between Kilmarnock and Cruces. Why is a council are we no saying, no, we want you to build in Ballochmyle, we want you to build in Newcomnock. And then we've got to get the infrastructure right, the connectivity, transport. Well, remember Rod sat in here and voted through a motion with Billy Crawford regarding buses. Now, that's something we should be progressing and continue to progress. If we get into London, you can, and I ken I'm no comparing apples with apples here, but you get into London, you can travel over London for a maximum of 10 quid. Okay, I mean, that's the cap. So why should somebody from Muirkirk have to pay a fare to get to Cumnock and then pay another fare to get to Kilmarnock, for example? And we talk about trains. Now, I remember the agonies we had to go through in this council to get a train every half an hour, never mind a new station. So if we've got likes at Auchinleck, why do you not make sure if kids are going to uni in Paisley or Glasgow or even Edinburgh, if they can get to Auchinleck, why do we not make sure that Auchinleck's a hub for better transport so as they can get to Mauchline or Cumnock or New Cumnock a lot easier? And just in the last point, can I heard Councillor Boyd saying, we ken the money's no there. But that's no true. The money is there. See, when we want to go and bomb or blow something up thousands of miles from here, money is absolutely no object. So the money is there. It needs a national will for the government. And when I'm talking about national, I'm not just talking about Scotland. I'm talking about the UK to get integrated transport and house building in the south of our area. Because it is a lovely place to stay, and that's what we should be looking at, in my opinion. Thank you.
I like that input. Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Barton, then Councillor Richardson. Councillor Barton.
Thanks, Provost. Amy, thanks very much for the hard work you've put in, and just like the other members in the chamber, I'm absolutely delighted we've secured the extra funding to keep in place. I've heard some great commentary in the chamber today, and my colleague Jim McMahon just nailed it for me, and he spoke with passion. So thanks for that, Jim. But I just want to, we've started the next local development plan. Depopulation needs to be embedded in the heart of the next local development plan. It needs to be one of the core aspects of it. And what you've done, Amy, we've got the local development plan officers working group, and I think inviting you along to the next one would be a great addition to that. And we're quite fortunate today. We've got our planning colleagues in the room, and I'm just wondering if they could maybe enlighten us in what part you'll play in this addressing depopulation.
Thank you. Yes, we're very aware of the issues of sort of depopulation, working closely with Ian and Amy on that. And in fact, we've actually been taking a more pragmatic approach whereby we have been setting up these housing developer roundtable. And it was primarily for the southern area to encourage that interest, because we're aware that the house builders don't go beyond Mauchline. And to be honest, it has exceeded our expectations. We are intending to do a further one, concentrating on, again, the southern end in terms of sort of the population, decline there on that, the imbalance on that, and getting views from the private sector. And to hear what the Deputy Provost is saying, we have many discussions on that. The difficulty we have is, we are often market-led on that, and the house builders want to go to certain areas. The Annick ward is very attractive to them because it's close to Glasgow on that, and there's real demand, but it doesn't say. And what came away from the developer roundtable, I suppose, it's the council having that pragmatic approach, that positive approach to actually go and knock on the door of these house builders and of the small and medium house builders and get them engaged as well on that. And certainly that will be the heart of the local development plan 3 going forward on that, and trying to deal with that through a plan-led approach.
Yeah, it's really reassuring. Thank you. Okay. Yep. Councillor Richardson.
Thanks, Provost. As always, and I've listened with interest to everything that all my colleagues have said, as always, it all boils down to money. Now, in the summer, I think I've mentioned it 2 or 3 times already, because I had a great holiday in Southern Ireland. And myself and my wife travelled from Waterford in the east, right over to the Ring of Kerry on the west. We went down as far as Cobb on the coast, where that was the last time that the Titanic was seen before it went on its ill-fated voyage. We visited Cork. We went to Clonakilty, which is the birthplace of Michael Collins, the big man, who was a great leader for Ireland in its fight for freedom. Now, the reason I mention all those places is that's not built up Ireland. 20, 30 years ago, that would have been seen as rural Ireland. But see, when you're driving along the new motorways that have been built in Southern Ireland, you can't help but think, this is absolutely brilliant. Either side of those new motorways are housing developments, and it all boils down to money. Now, the Scottish Government's going to try its best, because it's actually committed now to launch a Scottish Government bond for infrastructure. But there's things I've been waiting for 10, 20 years in this country, like the dualling of the A9 all the way to Inverness. That's still going on, and it's still having to be done in sections. Now, this is a nation which, to be quite frankly, if we would have been independent, we could have had all this infrastructure, but our oil and our gas revenues have been wasted, and that's where I differ from John, because the answer to this question is, let's be independent like Ireland, because I've seen what a small independent nation like Southern Ireland, or Aya, as we should really call it, can actually do when it can make its own decisions and not have its wealth siphoned off by Westminster.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Leader, sorry. Thank you.
Indulge me just I understand. I mean, I like to go to Ireland on holiday too, and I'm not going to list all the names of the places I go. But there's just, if you notice the signs, and that's north and south of the border, it was up to very recently. There was a big, you notice there's a wee flag, it was a blue flag with wee yellow stars in the middle of it, a circle of them. And that's certainly, Europe certainly helped the Irish economy in terms of infrastructure. But the serious point is, in terms of our connectivity with Europe, the closest point the UK to Europe is down the A77. And why the southwest, and that's maybe a thing for the next, another thing for whoever the next government is, that there's been far too much a focus away from the southwest Scotland. Southwest Scotland's got an important part to play, not just for connectivity with England and Wales, but also across to Ireland. And I think we don't make enough of that, and we really have to really lobby hard and get some of the focus there. And maybe that's a question for everybody that's going out to the Hudsoners, is just to see what their respective parties are doing to improve infrastructure right across the South West Scotland. Because we saw, I mean, when we had the increasing population in Alnwick and Kilmarnock West and Kilmarnock North, it's no coincidence it was with the half-hour service with the rails. Similarly with the M77, 15, 20 years ago, that dramatically changed. So infrastructure leads the population in terms of making them more, attractive to businesses. But I think, Jim, at that point that colleague Jim McMahon said, is we've got to fight to protect communities, because we just don't want, a kind of suburb of Glasgow. We want thriving communities like Stewart and Kilmarnock, Cumnock, Colson, everywhere. They've all got something to offer. They're all different. That's what right across East Ayrshire we've got really such diverse communities. And I know Annika was telling us yesterday that vibrant communities finished yesterday, but the communities themselves live on, and it's important that each one has its own identity. But I think one of the things we really need to do is fight for infrastructure.
Yeah, for sure. Members, I think we're all in agreement for all the different kind of angles. If it's quick.
It's really quick, Provost. The leader made a great, Europe, I agree 100% with them, but also the thing that's providing Ireland with most of the capital to spend on all of these capital projects is they have control over their corporate tax. And some of the companies that are paying corporate tax in Southern Ireland, it would blow your mind.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Drew Ferguson.
Thanks. I agree with everything that's been said by my colleagues previously, but I take more a positive, optimistic view for the Doon Valley, because things are actually going pretty well just now, and it's the communities that's taking charge. And that's through community win-fan benefit, basically. Again, we're quite lucky we've got the South Kyle there just now coming into the communities. So we've got the Melton Parish Development Trust, we've got an all-inclusive cycling track in. We can see kids actually cycling to the school now. They're down there using the cycle track all the time as well. We've took on community asset transfers like the community centre, really thriving. A good group in there has been running that for the past 4 or 5 years. Like our sports pavilion, that's getting upgraded just now as well. We've just bought our local church, 180 years of history there. And inside that church, we're going to be saving the church, saving our observatory we lost, and saving the local museum, all coming back in. That's communities taking charge and put it back into what the community wants. And that's where we're coming from our action plan. The Melton's on their third action plan just now, and this is the first time, because we've got funds there now from the community, win-fan money, that we've been able to tick off these things, like public toilets, like the church, what the community's asked for, and that's definitely working in the area. So I'm quite positive what's happening. We're not getting a brand new school, but we're getting a refurb. But I'm quite positive that the refurb will be really good as well, and a big positive to do Wellington, because the house sales in the Doon Valley are still there. There's people coming in all the time, and the house sale prices are staying there in the Doon Valley. So I'm quite positive the way things is working, but it's the communities that's taking charge and putting the money to where the communities want the money to go to. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Filson. Absolutely agree. He's doing great in the Doon Valley. Members, are we okay then? Yep. From myself, just thanks very much for the paper. I'm Falconlake, and you actually see it as time goes on, and I live now in a neighbouring village that doesn't even have a bus service. And with a 12-year-old, that's not always ideal. So all the different angles in which we're all seeing it, thank you for taking all that into accountability. And Amy, you've done a great job in taking that work forward, so thank you very much for that. You've done great. Okay, members, moving on to agenda item 8. This is a planning application, number 250554PP, and we have David Wilson from Planning here to speak us through the paper. Thank you.
Thanks, Provost. The purpose of this report is to present a national scale planning application for determination of council following a predetermination hearing process held by Planning Committee on the 20th of February. The application site is located in an area of commercial forestry to the north-east of New Cumnock at the end of Mansfield Road. Scottish ministers granted Section 36 consent for the Lethans Wind Farm in June 2020 and also granted deemed planning consent, which included a range of planning conditions. Ministers granted an extension to the Section 36 consent in 2025 to allow commencement of that consent to occur up to the 18th of June 2029. The development under consideration is a Section 42 planning application made under the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act. Such applications relate to the conditions subject to which planning permission should be granted. Such applications generally do not review the principle of a development except in specific circumstances, and as noted at paragraph 9 of Appendix 1, in this case the principle of development and its impacts are not under review or consideration. Should the application be granted, it would result in a new planning permission being granted in addition to the existing deemed planning consent granted by ministers. The development proposes a variation to one of the deemed planning consent conditions that were attached to the consent granted by ministers in 2020 and also seeks the addition of a new condition within the deemed planning consent. The addition of a condition on first view is out with the scope of Section 42. However, as explained at paragraphs 6 and 7 of Appendix 1, it's considered that what is proposed is not truly a new condition, but instead is a variation of an existing condition, albeit the effect gives the impression of adding a new condition. This is all considered to be competent under Section 42 and the Planning Act as explained in those paragraphs. The specifics of the proposed development are set out at paragraphs 14 to 20 of Appendix 1 and comprises of a proposed revision to existing condition 26 relating to pre-commencement reptile survey, and which would instead introduce mitigation measures that are already secured through other condition documents, including species protection plans and the construction environmental management plan. In addition, a variation of the deemed planning condition relating to the commencement period is proposed, extending the commencement period to June 2029, aligning with the extension given by ministers to the Section 36 consent. Consultation responses with a range of relevant consultees are set out at paragraphs 23 to 34 of Appendix 1, noting no consultee has raised any concern, subject to appropriate conditions being attached to any new permission. 2 third-party objections were received as detailed at paragraph 35 of Appendix 1. The assessment of the application is set out from paragraph 39 to 57 of Appendix 1, noting that the principle of renewables development continues to be supported through the development plan, and the grant of an extension to the Section 36 consent by ministers is a strong material consideration in support of grant of additional time to commence the development under the associated planning consent. There are no physical changes to the development, and therefore there are no additional or new adverse impacts that have not already been considered and mitigated through conditions of the existing permission. In addition, the changes to the reptile survey condition do not lessen the protection to those species, noting the additional supporting information presented by the applicant that the species continue to be properly accounted for and protected under other planning conditions, and importantly, Nature Scot have agreed with the proposed approach, noting that this better aligns with their most up-to-date guidance. An appropriate assessment undertaken separately by officers for the impacts on the adjacent special protection area and the site of special scientific interest continues to confirm that the integrity of these designations is not affected. Whilst cumulative impacts in the wider landscape have changed since consent was first granted, this application does not introduce any new cumulative effects, having been given proper consideration in all assessments of more recent developments. When granting consent in 2020, ministers did not make this dependent on agreeing a Section 75 legal agreement. However, the applicant has worked closely with the Council and a legal agreement is largely agreed. The applicant continues to commit to this, and taking account of that particular background to this application, it's considered that it would be unreasonable to withhold any consent pending conclusion of that agreement in this case. Section 42 also allows the Council to consider all of the planning conditions and not just those specifically applied for, and in this case some further minor non-substantive changes are suggested to other conditions, as explained at paragraphs 52 to 57 of Appendix 1. As noted within the conclusions at paragraphs 58 to 61, the development is considered to be compliant with the development plan, and the extension to the Section 36 consent granted by ministers is an important material consideration. No changes to the previously approved layout, scale or design of the wind farm are proposed. The extent of changes applied for by the developer are narrow, with the key element considered to be the additional time to commence the development. The information submitted by the developer and the position of Nature Scot suggests that the change to the reptile survey condition is sensible and still ensures proper protection of this species through the new condition and other existing conditions. At the predetermination hearing, members of the Planning Committee were provided with the above summary, heard a presentation from the applicant and came to a recommendation that the application be referred to full council with a provisional view that the application should be approved subject to the conditions within the Planning Committee report. The recommendation to council is therefore set out at paragraph 2 of the paper, which is to consider the report of the Chief Planning Officer, the recommendation of Planning Committee, and to approve the application subject to the conditions set out within Appendix 1. Thanks, and I'm happy to take any questions.
David, thank you very much. I've already had some people indicating speak already. Councillor Graham Barton.
Thanks, Provost. As Chair of the East Ayrshire Council Planning Committee, I think it would be appropriate that I make comment on this application. On the 20th of February 2026, the Planning Committee considered application number 25/0554/PP. A predetermination hearing took place. The committee held representation from Aileen McCready from On Path Energy in support of the application. No statutory consultees or objectors were present. In consideration of the application, in terms of the additional planning condition to extend the commencement period for 3 years, I gave considerable weight to the fact that Scottish ministers have already granted a 3-year Section 36 extension to the 18th of June 2029. Also, that the principle of the development having already been made via consent of application 19/0004/S36, with no changes to the layout, ground conditions, wind turbines and associated infrastructure within this Section 42 application, I was content with the addition of this condition. In the variation of condition 26 part 1, Nature Scot offered no objection to the application, and indeed the wording of the new condition aligns with the current Nature Scot guidance. The watching brief of the Environmental Clerk of Works during the whole construction period provided further comfort that reptile protection measures were in fact being enhanced via the variation of this condition. So again, I was content with that. In determination after committee consideration, the Planning Committee agreed to 1, to endorse the view of the Chief Planning Officer that the application be recommended for approval, subject to the conditions and for the reasons detailed in the report, and 2, that the recommendation of the Planning Committee be deferred to Council for consideration the termination of the application on the 2nd of April 2026. I would therefore move that full council endorses the Planning Committee recommendation to approve the application.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barton. That's some good background. Councillor Sally Cogley.
Thank you very much. And for those of us who aren't planners, just in terms of simplifying some of the jargon. So as I understand it, the principal application for which approval has been granted is additional wind turbines on a site that already has wind turbines. Is that correct?
Thanks, Councillor. It already has a Section 36 consent, which is under the Electricity Act, and it has deemed planning consent, which was granted by ministers, and that's under the Planning Act. So that was the original consent, which is for the exact same development that we've got in front of us in terms of its physical attributes. It's a wind farm with all the associated infrastructure. Because of the delay for the applicant in being able to commence the development, they come back to Scottish ministers who have control over the Section 36 consent, and they've granted an extension to that part. But they have to come to us to extend the deemed planning consent. So what we are being asked to do is to basically grant essentially the same development again with a minor tweak to the conditions. So it's the same development that got consent physically. It just essentially is being pushed out for a longer period to commence it. So hopefully that gives a wee bit of comfort.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So the principal, the core application is additional wind turbines, and this is just about reptiles.
Yeah, well, it's the condition about reptiles, so it's just about how protection of them is approached. So that's one of the mitigation elements for that particular species. There's lots of planning conditions on, you see them covering various different matters. The reptile survey was put forward condition-wise as a pre-commencement, but in review of that, the applicant's proposing that they don't need to do that specifically pre-commencement. It'll be built into species protection plans. So they will do pre-commencement assessment, but it's not the same as the full survey, and Nature Scott backs that. The other critical part of this is it's the condition to extend the period of time to commence the development. That is probably the real key pressure for them, because time's ticking down to when they would need to start the development, and this extends it a bit more. But those are the two changes, but it's solely to the condition wording rather than anything else.
Thank you. And what reptiles do we anticipate on site?
I am not an expert in that, but the additional environmental information suggests that it could be lizards and various bits and pieces. There can be protected species. There are some protected species that fall within that. The survey suggests that there's really not very much on the site in terms of that particular species. There are some other species that are more prevalent, but essentially it's a kind of it's a check to make sure that species are properly taken account of and protected as best they can, rather than something about a particular type. There's species protection plans for certain birds and various other species, badgers, different things. Reptiles is a kind of broad one for that, and it's just proper protections of that as a broad species as part of the construction. But I can't go any further and tell you exactly which ones it is. I'm afraid that'll be for the ecological clerk of works to review that on site and take relevant measures as they see fit, as the experts that we'll be looking at it.
Thank you. So we don't need to worry about frogs and toads. Thank you.
To be animals. Thank you. Councillor Boyd.
Thanks, Provost. Page 177, just an interesting wee aside. Good bit of mathematics in there. The wind turbine noise, a logarithmic function. So there is an important part to that. Mathematics, jobs. So there you've got maths, university maths, physics, engineering. So that's providing good employment. And again, we're talking about depopulation, people coming back for university, living in these areas. There's jobs there, highly skilled jobs. That equation jumps out at me. That is high level mathematics. So there's really good jobs in these wind farms. So good. One of the thing with wind farms is just don't put them in areas where you go hill walking, etc. You wouldn't put them in cairn table, etc. That doesn't happen. So it's good. It was just a wee aside, given what we were previously talking about in the last paper.
Absolutely fair. Thank you. I opened that paper there and I forgot about the wee mathematical symbol, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Thank you. Councillor Drift-Wilson.
I was just wanting to second Councillor Barton's proposal there, Provost.
That's great. Yep, thank you. Council, is there anyone else want in, or anyone else otherwise minded about the proposal of Councillor Barton, seconded by Drift-Wilson, to approve? Yeah, we all good? Sorry, Councillor McMahon. I'm so sorry, Councillor McMahon.
Thank you, Provost. It's just for comment. I echo the sentiments Councillor Boyd there running about the jobs and the really technical jobs that come off the back of the wind farms and what we're going to need to maintain them in the future. However, during the construction period, there is massive investment as well, and it's not to be overlooked by the millions that have been spent with developers and our wee shops in Newcombe that I spoke about earlier on there are the beneficiaries of that when it goes there. It's not very often I get to talk about planning issues. I don't sit on planning committee, and I don't particularly want to ever sit on planning committee where so many things are subjective. And the reason I mentioned subjective, it was another comment that Councillor Boyd, it's okay as long as you don't pick them at the top of cairn table. If I could have turned the clock back 90 to 100 years when they built the Barney Power Station, I could probably say that about a power station and nothing like I put it on a wood bar right in the outskirts where I don't want reeking chimneys, spewing emissions all over the place. I think the way we're looking at it's generational for us. I think it's when we look at wind turbines, we'll look at them, they're new in the scene for us, whereas the younger people are born into them. And it's like me with the spewing chimneys, when the spewed reeking out every house in East Ayrshire, right out through everything. When I was born on the planet, I took it as is. That's what happens. And did I ever object to it? No, I never objected to it. And I'm finding that with the younger people, where I find the objections coming is a generational thing. And it's fair, folk like my generation that sees them, they're new on it, they're ruining the landscape. And again, it's a subjective thing, and it's how close you are, where they are. I see them for Sorn, all right, along the landscape. I see them for Ochiltree over the landscape. And the reason I couldn't have sat and plan in it, because they don't bother me. And it's an opinion, and it's a subjective opinion. So I just thought I would come out with that there. It's a generational thing for me where the objections comes in. Where younger people absolutely get the point of them, and when they're born onto the planet, they're there when they come on.
Yeah, fair. Thank you. Members away, okay. Yep, agreed. Thank you. Okay, members, we're on to agenda item number 9. This is the proposal for an additional public holiday for the Scotland World Cup on the 15th of June, and I'll pass to Amanda Lowe to take us through the paper. Thank you.
Thanks, Provost, and good afternoon, members. The purpose of this report is to present Council with options in relation to marking Scotland's participation in the World Cup, scheduled match at 2 AM UK time on the 14th of June by either granting a public holiday on the 15th of June or making no change to the existing arrangements. Backgrounds is detailed within paragraphs 3 through to 6, and the current position starting in paragraph 7 notes the COSLA guidance. And noting in paragraph 8, no national position has been adopted for the event, and councils across Scotland are currently assessing their own approaches. Paragraph 9 gives the benchmarking. This benchmarking has moved on since the report was lodged. The current position is now remains as 3 councils have agreed, 21 councils have not agreed an additional public holiday, and with 8 remaining with no decision, that includes ourselves. The options for consideration, starting in paragraph 10, 2 options have been developed. First option would be to designate an additional public holiday on the 15th of June for all employees. This carries a high financial impact due to public holiday payments, cover arrangements for essential frontline workers that must continue to operate in public holidays, and it would also reduce the number of working days available for our other teams. The second option is to make no change to the current arrangements. Paragraph 13 details the primary impact in granting the additional public holiday and the associated financial costs, particularly in relation to our essential frontline services. Paragraph 14 describes the impact of the additional public holiday on our young people, and I would note that Scottish Government put a deadline of last week on asking for approval for an additional non-teaching day to take them below the 190. We put that provisional ask in, and they have granted that request in case members vote in favour of granting the additional public holiday. Paragraph 15 advises that based on the considerations, officers are recommending that additional public holiday is not granted. The implications are detailed in paragraph 16 through to 19, with recommendations back at paragraph 2, noting that whilst officers are recommending that approval is not granted, elected members are invited to consider the options presented to either grant an additional public holiday or leaving the existing arrangements, noting the financial implications of the additional public holiday, and otherwise noting the contents of the report, and happy to take any questions.
Amanda, thank you very much. Members, Leader.
Thanks. You know, as having went to most of the qualifiers at Hampden, much like a ticket for all the games except Denmark. That's just I regret that to the day. But I think at this time, the games at Saturday, 2 o'clock in the morning into Sunday, I don't think this is necessary. And I think we heard earlier on, we've really, the serious point is how many care packages would you avoid cutting with £250,000? So it's thanks, but no thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you very much, Provost, and I would echo everything that the council leader has said here. The last time Scotland were at the World Cup, I was supposed to go, but there's a story maybe for out with the chamber as to how a young Councillor Douglas, and not a councillor obviously in those days, didn't quite make it. Anyway, enough said about that. No, I think it's spot on when we've been discussing the significant challenges we have in terms of our health and social care budget. This is not the time to be adding financial burdens onto the council. And I'm sure everybody in this chamber and all our staff will absolutely be up and watching the game and enjoying that, I hope, positive outcome that will come from it. But the reality is, we've got time to recover on the Sunday, back to work on the Monday. And if you want the day off, you put in for annual leave. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Thanks, Provost. Yeah, I've probably got to agree with the leader and Councillor Douglas. I mean, we plug for my own wee Facebook page. A few weeks ago, I noticed that Glasgow City Council had voted in favour, and I noticed that, quite funnily, that one of the councillors in Glasgow had said, that, to quote, I think, "Oh, this is just an excuse for a swally." So I thought, right, this is going to hit home with the public. So I put a wee question up on my own Facebook page, my councillor Facebook page. I think I got about 4 responses, but each individual response was, how can you be increasing our council tax at this time? And services are, you know, maybe know what they should be, and how can you look to grant yourselves an extra day's holiday? And I think, to be honest, that's why I've got to agree with the leader and Councillor Douglas. Also, there's a wee bit of the Scotsman inside me saying, what are we doing trying to give ourselves a holiday for just getting to the World Cup? I'd keep all the holidays back, and if we win the thing, we can have a week off.
Leader.
Listen, for one, I think there's Steve Clark's getting the freedom of the borough.
Right, members, anyone else online? Okay, you okay? Councillor Watts? Yeah. Okay, are we okay to decline? Okay, thank you, members. And members, just to finish off, last agenda item is just a change for the SNP group that Caroline Barton replaced Councillor Cannon in the Cunningham Housing. Is that all right with everybody? Great. Okay, members, thank you very much. That concludes the business of the meeting and the recording. So thank you.